In accordance with New Jersey Statute 10:4-10, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to a newspaper of record and has been posted here in City Hall. Please be advised, this is a no-smoking building. Fire exits are to my right and your left, and the back of the room. This is a scheduled meeting of the Planning Board. There may be other meetings currently running simultaneously with this meeting. If you're not here for Summit Planning Board, your meeting may be upstairs or somewhere else in the building. At this time, we should stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And if our secretary would make a roll call.
Sure. Chairman Zucker?
Here.
Vice Chairperson Balsan Alvarez is expected but not yet present. Mr. Felmet?
Here.
Mr. Spur?
Here.
Councilmember Hamlet? Here. Mr. Delory is excused. Ms. McGee? Here. Mr. Formicelli?
Here.
Mr. Stern?
Here.
Mr. Bell is expected but not yet present. And Ms. Bowen is excused. You have a quorum. You may proceed.
All right, thank you. Here's Ms. Balsan Alvarez.
Yes, Ms. Balsan Alvarez is here now. Okay.
Okay, I do believe we have a couple of requests to carry, and, or just one request, actually. So that would be application PB 23271, 2 Parkview Terrace, Michael and Susan Balo. The board is, sorry.
If we could just, Mr. Chairman, have the new date, time, and place announced, then it is with an extension of time to act. I believe it's May 28th, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, sure, I'm just pulling it up. Thanks. I think I do. You left the letter for me right here, dated March 4th. So the application was scheduled to be heard today. They've requested that it be carried to May 28th. And that no further notice with respect to the adjournment would be required, since we're doing this announcement at this meeting.
And we do have an extension of time to act through the end of the month of June in writing, Mr. Chairman, so we're covered there.
We are covered. All right. They offer several reasons for this request, including retaining a professional to review the drainage issue that we raised with them, and to provide adequate expert testimony for when they do appear. So do we have any thoughts or objections to granting the extension? All right, so take a vote.
We can do a motion, second voice vote will be fine.
I'll take a motion to extend to.
So moved.
Thank you, Stats. Thank you, Mr. Spur. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Stern. Voice vote? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? None? Hearing none, it's passed.
Got it.
Next on the agenda is, I'm sorry.
Councilwoman said that it might not be on YouTube.
I don't know. Are we all live on YouTube?
We should be.
It's usually live, so that's unusual.
We're just checking to make sure the live feed is active.
Okay.
That's true, adequate notice. Next on the agenda, we have a courtesy hearing on the turf project from Summit High School. So a second.
Maybe Mr. Zucker, before we begin, would you, Mr. Warner, just for our new planning board members, myself included, give us a brief kind of introduction to what is a courtesy hearing any latitude for discourteousness or?
That's
none?
right. It's, no, happy to do so, Mr. Chairman, with your
Please do
permission
so.
as well. It's both a courtesy review and a courteous one, as all our reviews are very courteous. But yes, pursuant to Section 31A of the Municipal Land Use Law, whenever the governing body or any other public agency has jurisdiction over the subject matter relating to the necessity to expend public funds incidental to the location, character, or extent of a project, that project is referred to our planning board for review and recommendation in conjunction with the master plan, and we have a 45-day period of time within which to conduct that quote-unquote courtesy review. This is not, specifically a school board project, which is specifically stated in that MLUL provision as being one of the types of projects that require capital project courtesy review by the planning board. Our role as a planning board pursuant to the MLUL and other relevant statutes is strictly recommendatory. We review in connection with the master plan for consistency and like. We can make recommendations, but the actual zoning enforcement, if you will, and the specific regulation of school board projects is with the state. And I suspect applicants' counsel, who I believe was about to appear before us, Mr. Chairman, probably would agree with that, but we'll leave that to him to say. But we do have, can make recommendations, and hopefully, if and when we do, the school board will consider them and attend to them. And Mr. Chairman, I think we have a question.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Warner, so this is obviously a recommendation, consistency review. So if everything is going to be followed through from the state, then who would be responsible for providing safety studies within this particular
Safety
application?
studies, I assume, would be done by the state Department of Education, but maybe applicants' counsel can speak to that. But after he enters his appearance, with the chair's permission.
Thank you.
Mr. Feldman.
Yeah, just a quick question. So is there going to be an actual vote, or just the considerations will be taken into account?
There's
at
not
the
a
end?
vote on an approval or a denial.
Approving anything.
Right,
Be-
yeah.
But certainly, we can address whether or not we find that the project is consistent with the master plan, and we'll hear no doubt from our planner in regard to that. We can certainly address recommendations, and we will have a memorializing resolution, but the authority of the planning board for school board projects is not a yay or a nay, or to impose conditions, but rather, as I said, to make the consistency review and to make the recommendations, if any.
Got it, thanks.
Okay, at this time,
Excuse me, before you proceed, I just want to leave a note for you, because the matter that I was here for is
Mr. Warner?
to me.
it's moved, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I take it that has nothing to do with the application before?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
It's about the date on my car door.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Warner, I know this is a courtesy hearing.
Yeah.
Uh,
Mr. Chairman, you have to direct any comment to the chairman.
I'm sorry.
I know this is a courtesy hearing. I represent the Summit Housing Authority. We're an adjacent landowner. Will this be open to my ability to at least ask some questions?
It is, Mr. Chairman, based on the inquiry, I'll advise the chair with your permission. It is a hearing in the sense that it is a courtesy review, but it's open to the public for question and comment. So that should alleviate the concern expressed by counsel. And I take it from applicant's counsel, who has yet to enter his appearance, no objection, correct?
No objection.
Okay, thank you.
All right, at this time, I'd like to ask the representatives of the school board to come forward with their presentation.
Ben Lindeman on behalf of the school board from Porzio, Bromberg, and Newman and Morristown. As council so well put, this is a courtesy review of a capital project for turfing of the school. As a Section 31 review, we are here required by statute to bring an application for said review and recommendations regarding the project as it relates to the master plan. The project is for improvement of Summit High School athletic fields adjacent to Morris Avenue. The improvement primarily for the purpose of installing turf field, but will include some additional improvements as well. We believe the improvements keep with several of the provisions of the master plan and the re-examination report, which will be discussed as we go through the process. In order to help facilitate the board's review and provide additional information, we'll be hearing from the Board of Ed's engineer, Beth Kenderdine. We also have a few members from the Board of Education here as well, including Derek Jess, the business administrator. We've reviewed the materials provided by the city professionals and seek to address any concerns found therein. Additionally, the Board of Education continues to work collaboratively with the city on the project. I will now turn the presentation to Ms. Kenderdine.
And before we proceed, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I can swear in the witnesses for the courtesy review, even though it's just a courtesy review.
Okay.
I believe that, would we be hearing from the administrator? Or
If there's any questions for the, I assume there probably will be, but
I'll
if no
just-
questions, he won't be testifying independently.
Understood. I'll swear in your witness. I'll swear in our board professionals as well, our engineer and planner. If you'll all raise your right hand. Do all three of you swear to God or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you all.
Can I use that microphone?
Yeah, that's fine.
And counsel, you'll voir dire and qualify your engineer?
Before you begin, I just had one question.
I turned it on before.
And maybe Mr. Warner can answer this for us. For a courtesy review, is public notice the same as for a regular hearing?
No, it's not. Not the same.
All right, because we're not issuing a judgment or ruling.
Correct. It's not,
affects the land
under the
use.
MLUL, there is no requirement for public notice or personal notice.
So is there any notice requirement?
There's no notice requirement other than the courtesy review take place at an open public meeting. That is properly noticed.
All right, so it's not like some people got noticed over others.
Correct.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you, Ms. Kenderdine. Could you take me through your credentials as?
Yes, my name is Beth Kenderdine. I work with Edwards Engineering Group out of Somerville, New Jersey. We are owned by L2A Land Development in Englewood. I graduated from the University of Delaware in 1998, obtained my license in 2005. I'm a professional engineer in good standing in the state of New Jersey.
License is still in good standing, you said?
Yes, sir.
Have you appeared before boards previously?
I have,
First board,
all over New Jersey, if you need specifics. Trying to think, the last time I was in Parsippany. Let's see, Parsippany, North Plainfield, Watchung, New Providence.
Thank you.
Do
No,
you get any more?
Thank you. Does
Are
anyone have any
Chairman,
questions for this witness? I think we can accept you as an expert. Thank you.
Thank you. So as Ben pointed out, we've been hired by the Summit Board of Education to design a new synthetic turf system at the lower field at Summit High School. So this is an aerial of Summit High School. This is the high school building, the large parking lot. These are existing turf fields. This project is on the lower field that abuts Morris Avenue.
And I apologize for interrupting, Mr. Chairman, but, and Ms.
Kenderdine.
But are those the same plans that were submitted, and, I can't, March, what is the last revised date, March 1?
Yes, March 1, 2024, yes.
Okay, more than 10 days prior to this evening, they were submitted, so they don't need to be marked as an exhibit as long as they're the same plans. Nothing's been changed, correct?
Nothing's been changed.
Okay, please just reference the sheet when you refer to each one.
Will do.
Thank you.
I was looking at sheet C-00, which is the cover sheet of the plan set. I'm going to flip over to C0.1, which is just a more detailed key plan showing the area of the new project. So you can see here is Morris Avenue, and you'll see the footprint of the proposed synthetic turf field. It's a multi-sport field. So there'll be soccer, football, I think boys and girls lacrosse, and softball. Field hockey as well. So it's meant for to be used on a consistent basis for a number of different sports through the high school. The next sheet in the plan set is C1.0, which is an existing conditions plan. The existing field is obviously natural grass with a softball field in the corner here. It's got a pretty steep pitch for a playing field towards Morris Avenue. So a large part of our design was to flatten that out so we could get an artificial turf field to work with the terrain. So this is a more detailed site plan of what we're proposing. This is Morris Avenue along the straightaway here. You'll see we're proposing like an ornamental metal fence with brick pillars, a more decorative fence than chain link along Morris Avenue.
Are you on C 3.0 now?
Yes, I'm sorry, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, it's called site plan. So where you see this hatch will be the synthetic turf field. Then around it, we're proposing concrete walkways for access. We have a paved walkway off Morris Avenue, that's for emergency access, and for pedestrian access off Morris. Then on this side of the field, this is, I think the housing development is on this side of the field. That's where we're putting some very small bleachers for for visitors. What's the word I'm looking for?
Spectators?
Spectators, thank you, for spectators. Sorry about that. Then around the outside, this is where there's going to be a new scoreboard with access to the school from these two areas and access down to the field. So the improvements are very minimal. There is no lighting proposed. The fencing is really just proposed to keep balls and players inside the field. There is a retaining wall proposed around the side so that we can get standard field sizes and overplay areas on the actual field. I think probably the other sheet sets are a little more detailed. If you want me, I can go through those areas, but this is like the overall scheme of the project. Does anybody have any questions on the scope? Yes.
You just mentioned that the retaining wall on the, towards the Summit Housing Authority side would be
Yes.
used so that you could get the standard field size. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, because there's a pretty significant slope along this side of the existing field.
Well,
Right.
wouldn't the slope be, wouldn't you be doing that to prevent stormwater management to be getting into the Summit Housing Authority residents?
Well, not necessarily. We're putting in the retaining wall so that we can flatten the area, so we have a flat area for the field. The stormwater management system is beneath the field.
Okay.
So it will collect all of the stormwater from the field, and it will be retained in an expanded stormwater management system. So I'm going to flip to the utility plan. This is sheet C-5.0. What you see here, so the synthetic turf is porous. It's got like a plastic carpet with a rubber and sand infill. That's completely porous. Then beneath that is a layer of clean stone. So all of the water will perforate into that layer of clean stone, and then it will be picked up by an underdrain system and piped into a large underground detention system. So what we have here, this on the north side of this plan, that's actually an existing stormwater management system that was designed and put in when the upper fields were constructed. So that is designed to take runoff from the upper artificial turf fields and control that rate of runoff into the offsite storm sewer system. So what we're proposing to do is essentially double that in order to handle the runoff from the new synthetic turf field. it'll be collected by the underdrain system, and then it will go into the underground detention system, and then it will be controlled by an outflow structure into the downstream system.
And the downstream system
Leads to the storm sewer system in Morris Avenue, I believe.
Avenue.
Yeah.
So in terms of the doubling of the capacity, that's doubling of the capacity on site to retain the stormwater?
Correct, yes.
And then and we'll hopefully hear from Mr. Schrager about the storm sewer's capacity to really receive that volume of water? I don't know if you have any opinion on it, or maybe Mr. Schrager does.
I am not intimately familiar with the capacity of the downstream system.
Okay.
I can tell you that our design accounts for the increase in the rate of runoff coming from the site and decreases that in accordance with state regulations.
Do you have any opinion regarding storm sewer capacity?
Yeah, the general area is, plagued by some older and not ideal stormwater systems that we have there, so. But since they are deemed a major development by NJAC 7:8, they are required to reduce it, so they will not be making it any worse.
Okay.
They have to actually reduce it, so, I mean, we have some other comments on the system itself, but in theory, it won't be worse than it is. But by no means am I saying this is a perfect system, we should tie into it as much as we can, so.
Okay, thank you.
Please continue.
Well, I was asking for any other questions, or I can go through the comments that I've received.
I have at least one other question. Regarding the steep slope disturbance, approximately what is the square footage of the steep slope disturbance to allow for the additional flat overflow area?
Ooh, I don't know the
Was it
answer to that
calculated?
question. I have a scale. It's around 8,000 square feet, I think.
Thank you.
I can certainly get a more accurate number.
That's fine. I trust your ruler.
Councilwoman Henley, did you have a
Yeah,
question?
thank you. Through you, Mr. Chairman, the emergency access, I'm just having a hard time visualizing this because I'm just trying, on the Morris Avenue side.
Yeah. And I'm flipping back to C 3.0. Yes, there's actually an existing pathway here now. If I flip back to, let's see. So this is the existing conditions plan. And there's a very narrow pathway here off Morris Avenue. We are widening that so that we can get an ambulance in there if need be. It's being widened to 12 feet, so it's minimal because we don't want to encourage more traffic than just emergency access.
Vice Chair Paulson.
How tall are the retaining walls? I imagine they vary, but can you give us a rundown on the retaining walls going around and the fencing on top of the retaining wall?
Yes. The fence along this side of the field, I think it's supposed to be 6 feet high.
I'm sorry, when you say this side, can you give us the directional?
The north side.
North, thank you.
It's 6 feet high here. Excuse me.
6 foot high fence
There's
over.
a 10-foot high fence along the middle portion, the part that's closest to the property line. And then the wall, I think the highest part of the wall is this northern corner. And that is about 10 feet high. So between the wall and the fence, it's 20 feet high, or it could be slightly more in places. I think the planner calculated it at 22 feet high along that side.
Sorry, Ms. Kenderdine, can you check if your microphone is still on? They're telling me it's not coming through in the back.
Did I hit something? Hold on.
I don't hear anything at all.
Wait, wait. Is that better? Yes, okay.
Yes. Okay, sorry.
Okay, sorry, thank you.
Sorry, is there any other questions?
What's the decline in the north corner today between the property just adjacent to it and where that retaining wall is going? Is it just a natural slope of land?
It's a
or is there
pretty
any sort of retaining
significant
wall that's still there?
slope. Do you see there? I
Yeah,
don't think
now I
there's
do.
any retaining wall
Okay.
there now, but you can see where the contour lines are.
Yep.
This is about where the slope starts,
Right.
and then it really pitches down from there. So in order to bring the field up and grade it so that it's good for play, we had to raise that up by a significant amount.
And how much foot between the wall as far to the right as possible? How much space is there between that wall and the adjacent property?
You get out my scale, hold on. Looks to be about 3 feet.
Okay.
There's I believe this is a parking lot that's adjacent.
So from the sorry, quick question.
Oh, yeah, Mr. Palmer?
So from the existing plan to what you're showing us, is it moving from what to 3 feet, or is it existing 3 feet?
There is no existing wall.
Right, but the property line is,
The property line is not moving.
okay.
I'm sorry, can we just clarify 3 feet? So we're talking the end of the football field current property line, or sorry, the field. And then it immediately hits the top of the housing authority property, where the slope then goes down and there's all the broken trees. So what,
Where the slope is getting removed, so we're eliminating the slope in favor of this retaining wall. That slope is getting filled in, and this retaining wall is going to navigate the elevation change from our property to the adjacent property
just on that piece or the whole piece?
for this entire length.
Okay.
So correct me if I'm wrong, the piece closest towards Morris Avenue, there's sort of a house that was converted to an office there with a parking lot around it, I think, right? And then as you go further up, am I misremembering?
It's the architect's.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about right there.
Yep.
Yeah. That's the, what does it say, the old Olander Feldman architectural build, yeah. And then as you go further to the left, or further to the, I guess it would be the south, if you will, or southwest, that's where the housing is, apartments.
Right,
Right,
this
yep,
is where the
okay.
housing is.
But there's nothing there, there's just a natural, quasi-natural, descending of the land as opposed to any kind of wall today. But then there'll be a wall there that would be
Correct.
somewhere from 10 feet to maybe lower as it goes along that entire
Yes,
line?
yeah, as it, I am back to the grading down, which is C4. This is where it's gonna be the highest at this
Yeah.
corner, because that's where we have to fill in the most. But
That
the-
corner being directionally?
Sorry, the northernmost corner?
Northeast, northwest?
It's really just
It's northwest.
northwest, I guess, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
No, northeast.
No, east would be down here,
This is the north arrow. So right, north,
northwest then.
all right. Northwest.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
We'll work on our directional.
yeah, sorry. So, the height of the wall decreases as it heads toward the school.
Okay, so just to give a perspective, if you were to have this in section, which you don't have, right? That would help everybody, I think.
I do not.
Yeah.
I might have it.
At the very left-hand side, which would be the west side-ish of the field,
Mhm.
the wall is 3 feet?
closest to the school?
Closest to the school, it meets grade here, right about here, it's about 2.5 feet. And as it increases at this point, it is about 7 feet, a little over 7 feet high. And then it increases as it goes down to this corner.
And then the majority of the field is it's just gradually getting taller to the highest point of 20 between
Correct,
the
yes.
retaining wall, 10 feet above the field, and then another.
No, I'm sorry, the retaining wall is on the other side of the field, so.
Right, that's
So
true,
as you're
that's true.
standing on the field, you're
That's
just
right,
gonna
that
see
just
the
stays the
fence.
same. Right.
Mhm.
So when you're on the other side, where
Yeah, if
they're,
you're standing over here, you're
It's-
gonna see the 10-foot high
it's
retaining.
pretty much residential, is it,
There's some
both
commercial.
sides except for the architect's office, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the residents are gonna see 10-foot wall, and then they're gonna see a 10-foot fence.
Correct.
But on the pitch side, it's 2.5 all the way across, pretty much.
It increases from about 2.5 here, and the wall's gonna keep getting higher and higher and higher until it hits this point, and then it'll hit grade again.
Right.
So it's in here, I think, where it's the highest.
So what's the appearance of the wall on the residential side?
It's just, it's a standard modular block split face wall, so, it'll look like a landscape wall, but.
What color is it?
Did you guys pick out? I mean, there's standard colors, most of them are like shades of sand.
Is there any
And
sort of planting intended for that northwestern portion, that whole wall, or?
There is not,
Well, there's a whole line of trees, right, currently?
correct, there's some trees along the slope that are getting demolished to construct the field.
But on the other side of the wall, on the side that's closer to the residences?
The trees, there are some existing trees
Mhm.
along the property line that are remaining in place.
And that property line is roughly 3 feet or less?
No,
Between the
it's
wall and line?
at the smallest point, it's about 3 feet.
Okay,
It
okay,
increases from there.
it does, all right.
Yes.
How many trees are getting removed?
Sorry to interject, but Ms. Kenderdine,
Yes.
I think your microphone died, so can you just, is it too much just to use the table mic?
No.
Thank you. And I just want to remind everyone else to please talk into their microphones because they're having trouble picking up the audio in the back.
Okay. Woo. Okay. Hold on one second and I'll answer your question.
It's retaining.
Looks like about 14 trees. I can clarify that in writing if you need it.
I have a follow-up.
Yeah, Ms. Paulson offers.
On C 8.1, detail 4, is that the changing fence? Is that what's going to be on top of the retaining wall on the north side?
Yes, you found the detail for the retaining wall too. Good job. So this is the retaining wall, detail E. And then there'll be a fence mounted on top of it.
Right. Detail 4 is in the center. It's just a chain link fence and
So that's the ball stopper netting that's gonna be going on the north end of the field closest to Morris Avenue.
Oh, okay.
To keep balls on the field and not flying into the
do
street.
you have the fence that's going to go on top of the wall?
The fence that's going on top of the wall is a chain link fence.
And
It's a standard black vinyl coated fence, yes.
Does it need to be 6 feet?
I think it's actually 10 feet along that edge, and that's
I wrote it
mainly
down.
because we don't want balls getting off the field and flying onto the neighbor's property. So the purpose of that height is really to try and keep the apparatus and balls on the field instead of flying towards the neighbor's property.
And there's how much room for landscaping remaining on that side, on the north side?
On the north side, 10-0.
Okay. Yeah, 10 and 10.
So along the north side, the longest edge, there's about 6 feet there, but it's also going to be sloped. So our choices for landscaping are limited, but we can certainly propose some shrubs or some trees that might be able to accommodate that slope. I know I spoke with Derek Jess before the hearing, and then the school district is certainly willing to put in some landscaping to soften the effect of the wall if need be.
Thank you.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, in connection with that stipulation that the Board of Ed and the high school is offering landscaping to soften the wall on the north side, is that correct?
Mhm.
And would that be acceptable to be subject to the review and approval of, and I don't know if we would have our planner or who would review that?
I
But-
know that the city forester has already been out on the site and discussed what trees are getting removed. So we can certainly work with the city forester.
All right.
if
For
that's
landscape
acceptable.
softening for appearance, it could be the city forester. Just so we have someone, we're not gonna have a quantification of what's being put there or an exact location, so in the absence of all of that, the only thing left is someone to review and approve. So city forester, if that's amenable to the board, and really, again, it's recommendatory, so if that's amenable to the applicant.
That's acceptable to us.
Okay. Thank you. That's all.
All right. Does that-
Yes, through you, Mr. Chairman. Regarding the other side, so the south side, who will be, whose fence is that and whose trees are those? And to that effect, will those trees be replaced in that same manner? In the city forester's report, he talks about the northwest side, but he does not opine on the south side, and whether or not whose fence that is and whose trees those are, and if they're going to be replaced. If you could identify whose fence that is and whose trees those are, that would be great.
I believe that the fence is on the school district's property, and we're replacing part of the fence. So there's an existing fence along this property line that, for the most part, is remaining in place. We're replacing the fence along here.
I'm sorry, but if you
Sorry
could stop
about that.
saying here and this,
Oh, I'm sorry.
and give us
The
directions,
south-
so that there's a,
the-
it-
the
that's- there's a,
south-
bear with me,
Yes.
one at a time, that's also important for the recording. But the recording will have meaning if the video goes. The recording will have meaning if you could speak directionally.
Correct, sorry.
No problem.
Along the south property line where it jogs parallel to Morris Avenue. That fence will be replaced.
Was there a survey? Is there a survey?
We did not perform a property survey. We submitted one that had been performed by another entity.
Is that like a requirement of an application?
For a courtesy review, I don't know if Mr. Schrager knows offhand what our checklist is for for courtesy reviews, but I don't know that it would be necessarily a requirement of courtesy review checklist.
Yeah, I'm not aware. It's a much shorter checklist, I know that for
Yeah.
sure, but yeah.
I mean, what I will say is I spent time down there today with residents, and this fence matters to them, those trees matter to them, so I'm at a loss here because this is a really important piece for those residents.
How do you mean
Who
that
owns the
they?
fence specifically, who owns the trees specifically, and will they be replaced? So without a survey and us being unsure of that, that was sort of why I was asking those questions.
Okay. We can, the Board of Education is willing to work with the neighbor to determine the condition of the fence, if it needs to get repaired. I know the city forester has already been out there to look at some of the trees that are sort of growing in the fence. So the Board of Education is certainly willing to work with them along that property line.
Well, again, we're gonna take these as stipulations, and if they're gonna be in a resolution, so we need specificity. The Board of Ed's gonna work in good faith with the neighbor, and who's gonna decide if and what repairs need to be done to the fence, if and what number of trees need to be restored, what landscaping may need to be done for specificity so that somebody can read it, understand what it means, and then follow up, make sure it happens.
Well, since we're already working with the city forester on the other side of the property, I see no problem working with him or her along the south side of the
Okay.
property as well.
And is that for tree replacement, is that for landscaping, is that for fence repair, or all of the above?
I believe it's just for tree replacement.
And I think there was a question about fence
Yeah,
obligations as well as
If there's
landscaping.
an issue with the fence, I would recommend that the residents contact the Board of Education and work through them.
Is the plan for that fence to be removed? I guess that's the question right
No.
now. Okay.
No, the fence, a portion of the fence is being replaced. Nothing is being removed. So there is a portion of the existing fence that will remain in place. There is a portion of the existing fence that's being replaced entirely. But at the end of the project, there will be fence in the same location that it is now.
But how high is that going to be? Because I think the south side is 4 feet and it goes to,
This new fence that we're putting in along the south corner is 6 feet high.
So you're putting a new fence inside of their fence, so there'll be two fences there. Is that what's happening? Because you said you're not touching this other fence?
I think the fence is on the school district's property. We're replacing fence
Okay.
along that line.
Along the jog.
Correct.
And is there, did Mr. Linson or have you all determined that there are any trees that you can retain in the notch there? Because it looks like from the aerial that there are quite a few trees there, and I can understand why they would like that buffer.
From a design standpoint, the only trees we would take out are ones that interfere with the proposed construction. From a conditional standpoint, I know the city forester's already been out there and spoken with the district about removing some that are not in great condition.
But some are going to be still left and you can infill?
Yes.
Great, okay, thanks.
Do we have any other questions from the board?
Do you have any more questions?
Oh, Mr. Bell?
Oh, first, let me apologize for being late. I came from Europe and couldn't control the airplanes. Being late, didn't hear the presentation, but I looked at the documentation, including the report from the Environmental Commission, to which I serve as liaison. So I would be remiss if I didn't note that they offered some advice and perhaps objections. I just wonder if you have a reaction to the concern expressed by the people on the Environmental Commission about the material itself and its impermeability.
But the turf itself.
Yeah, the turf
carpet
itself,
and
not the landscaping, not the fence,
Right.
not the,
The
but the
synthetic
basic
turf-
concept of the project,
Yeah.
if you will.
The synthetic turf is permeable. We'll be collecting all the runoff in an under drain system and then controlling the rate of that runoff by a large underground detention system. And I understand the concern about synthetic turf, obviously that's been in the news. But I can't speak for myself, but clearly the Board of Education has decided that the synthetic turf is appropriate for this application. So that kind of concern really needs to go before the Board of Education. It's not an engineering question.
I teach at an engineering school, and I would say it is an engineering question because having to do that type of hydrologic intervention when ordinarily grass allows the water to seep down, you know, I've just
No,
thought
no,
that
I
the report
understand.
had some
From a
cogency,
hydrologic
and
standpoint.
yes, we could talk to
Yes.
the Board of Ed, obviously. I appreciate that this is a courtesy
Mhm.
review, and we have no real jurisdiction, but I just wanted to echo their objection. Thank you.
But to that point also, how does the heat retention of the turf affect the immediate area around there with the housing? Because that absorbs heat in a different way than, say, a grass field would. So I don't know if there's been any thought put into that at all.
I haven't done any analysis of that. So I can't speak whether it would impact the surrounding areas or not.
Mr. Chair.
Sorry.
would now be, Mr. Chairman, would now be an appropriate time to ask any stormwater management questions, or should we wait for those questions?
They're engineering questions.
Yeah.
Okay. So would it be okay now to go through the memo from Director Schrager?
Of course.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
think if you could just address the first one regarding the discharge targets.
Yes, we have reviewed our drainage analysis, and I think we understand the concern raised by Mr. Traeger.
I'm
And-
sorry, I'm having a little trouble hearing
Sorry.
you with all the paper rustling, but also, if you can give us which number you're referring to. We're referring to the March 13, 2024
Correct.
report from Aaron Schrager, our DCS Director and City Engineer, who's with us this evening. And can you give us the comment numbers when you're responding?
Yes, I'm referring to comment number 1 regarding the stormwater management report.
Thank
Subnote A is essentially regarding the discharge targets for separate drainage areas that we delineated on the drainage area map. We reviewed that in-house, and we can address that in writing to Mr. Strager's satisfaction.
So that's a will comply.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we will address all of the stormwater management comments in writing to Mr. Strager.
And by that, are you referring to 1 sub A through E, or are
A
you
through
talking
E.
about 1 through 11? Because there's some other
A-
stormwater
sorry,
management.
the stormwater management.
One at a time.
Sorry.
Tape won't get us both. Are you going beyond 1A through E that you'll stipulate the compliance with?
No, at this point, I'm just guaranteeing A through E.
Thank
Those
you.
are the stormwater management
I'm
requirements.
sorry, I think it's an important line by line. I think it's important to know, like, for instance, B,
Mhm.
the narrative makes reference to the Homedale Urban Land Complex. However, I mean, my city engineer, our director, is telling us that he has a problem with this. Is this something that you can address now specifically? Because this is an important consistency review for this board, and we want to share with the community that our director has shared with us that he has some questions, and we won't have an opportunity to go back to the community with these concerns. So I think it's important that we address these right now.
Okay. I believe we can accommodate or revise our report to address the different drainage areas
Okay.
that Mr. Strager noted in his comment. For B, that was apparently a typo. We had the wrong soil type in our report. We can revise that.
Do you know offhand what the right one is?
I do not. I'm sorry. Under C is regarding the rainfall depths. As I understand it, there are different options in the BMP manual regarding rainfall depths. We chose one option, and Mr. Strager prefers the other option, and so we will revise our report accordingly. D is regarding soil logs with regard to the New Jersey BMP manual. We have those, and we will submit them to Mr. Strager so he can verify the soil logs. And C, the report for green infrastructure, non-structural strategies, and groundwater mounding. We will also revise our report to address those issues.
Thank you.
Certainly.
So you all think these are solvable? This is not an issue?
Correct. Yes. If you want me to keep going through the comments, I can do that.
Yeah, please do.
Comment number 2 is regarding temporary drainage measures, which we actually have addressed in our specifications that the contractor must provide temporary drainage measures and diversions in order to mitigate runoff and make sure that it gets into the appropriate inlets or drainage ways so that we're not causing disruption during construction. Comment number 3, the synthetic turf construction detail calls for a 10-inch minimum depth. However, the perforated under drains are 12 inches. That we'll have to clarify on our plans, which we will do.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Please.
Can we just go back to number 2?
Certainly.
So it says the owner applicant shall be responsible for implementing temporary drainage measures during construction
Mhm.
to prevent adverse impacts to adjacent properties as needed. Such measures may include, but are not limited to, temporary berms and swales and/or hay bales. This is the problem, or this is my question.
Mhm.
It says, please consult with your engineer and your contractor during construction. So who's actually responsible? Is it the engineer or is it the contractor? Can we specify that? If the Summit Housing Authority residents all of a sudden have a massive stormwater problem, who do we look to?
It's the contractor's responsibility. The contractor has a contract with the Board of Education, and my company is providing construction oversight. So if there's an issue with the contractor or with stormwater, I would first contact someone from the school district, and they can get in touch with an emergency contact from the contractor. We have the communications in place to make that happen.
How often do you do site visits? during-
I think probably every 2 weeks, if needed. If there's any kind of issue on the site, then we'll certainly come out to take a look at that.
Personally, I'd like to see this strong, I spend every day with residents who are underwater, and I think this needs to be strongly worded. And the reason is because if someone starts flooding, as a council member, I'll have to contact the Board of Ed, and the Board of Ed is going to say it's in the middle of construction. And so I'm not sure, Mr. Warner, how we can do that, but it's a really, really important piece, especially with that steep slope there. I think it's really important we get this right, and we hold one individual, one company accountable for that stormwater runoff. And I'm not sure if that's allowed, but I think it's a really important piece here.
Aaron, does the city also do site visits during construction for city projects?
Yes, so this is unique because this is a city-funded but not a city project, so
Right.
it's through the Board of Ed, so there's no escrow posted through the process for a board application, so the board engineer Colliers wouldn't be on site. I think in light of what's happened and just moving forward based on my committee's general desire to have more oversight, I think the city will be out quite a bit on this project, as well as any other public projects moving forward. So the engineering
You have her
division will be
number?
out quite a bit, yes.
Good. Sorry, I said her.
We all know who it is.
Mr. Name.
Should I
Yes, please continue.
I believe I was on comment number 4, which is regarding the soil erosion and sediment control plan that has already been submitted and approved by the Somerset Union Soil Conservation District.
You'll obviously submit that to the, if it hasn't already been submitted here.
I believe the city engineer should get a copy of the certified plan. Have you?
Not that I'm aware of, we've had some absences, but
Okay.
we would like to. We'll get a notification from the district themselves. I just
Mhm.
can't speak to whether we've received that or not, so if we could get a copy, that would be
Certainly.
very appreciated.
Mhm.
I have another comment, sorry. Again, can we make this a little bit stronger? What we're seeing here in the city is sometimes, and I can only speak for residential projects right now, but that soil conservation doesn't get notified when the job starts. So could we put in here that the city will be contacted when the project obviously starts, and that soil conservation will be notified? Because what's happening on certain instances is we're not notified that the job is starting, soil conservation isn't notified, and the resident's underwater. And I know this is a different situation, but I think it's important to identify that in this line item here, if possible.
You have no objection to notifying the city and notifying the Soil Conservation District when you start, correct?
No, we will make sure the contractor notifies the
Okay.
Soil Conservation
you.
District.
Thank you.
On to number 5.
On number 5, there is no lighting proposed.
Okay.
Item number 6 is regarding the steep slope information. I can certainly provide a map showing what steep slopes are being disturbed, but I don't believe a variance is applicable, since the zoning ordinance is not applicable.
Right. Well, I don't know, Mr. Schrager's here, you can tell us what he means. I suspect he might mean he wants to know the categories between the percentages of how steep and how much in each category. Would that be
Mhm.
fair?
That's correct, yes. And it's detailed in our DRO, so, yes.
We can provide
Regardless
that.
of whether or not variance relief is required, the information is being sought.
Correct. We can provide the information.
Thank you.
I have a question to go back to 5 about the lighting. What wasn't clear, is there electrical infrastructure being put in place for potential for future lighting?
I believe we are proposing some minor conduits in case there's lighting in the future.
Is it noted where they're placed in the plans?
Not in the plans that you
Okay.
have.
Okay.
Nothing in the utility plan noted in there?
No, because it hasn't made it to the plans yet. Where they're kind of exploring options, because it's not proposed now, but it's a case of we don't want to have to take the field up if they decide in the future, so we're adding conduits.
So the possibility of future lighting is being taken into account in the planning?
I don't know what that plan is, to be perfectly honest, but
So as someone who is in a public firestorm about lights, I think this is a really important piece to clarify before we move forward with this. We're at city council meetings till 12 a.m. every day, so there's either conduit or there's not, right? That's it. And where's that detail? This is not your, there's either conduit or there's not. And I think the public deserves that answer. There's residents there.
There will be
that-
conduit. I don't know
So-
what the plan is for lighting.
Okay.
It hasn't
There
been
is no
designed
lighting
yet, but they're
proposed.
planning on it.
So the
On-
conduit could be for wires that are related to electrical, not lighting. So there's
Correct.
basic conduit that's wrong.
Yes.
Okay.
That is correct. Yeah, they're not proposing any power upgrades, light poles, stanchions, nothing like that at this point.
In the
The
event,
only-
if I may, Mr. Chairman, in the event the Board of Ed changes their mind and decides to install such lighting, is the Board of Ed going to, whether required or not, voluntarily come back to the planning board for further review for the lighting that's proposed, if and when it is?
That's,
Mr. Just question.
yes,
Yes?
yes.
That's a
Thank you.
yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Would you stipulate to noticing neighbors in a 200-foot radius of the project if and when lighting were proposed?
Would you like me to get up and be sworn in so that I can answer directly?
May be helpful, Mr. Chairman, it's up to you. We want to wait for the
Do we
conclusion of
have a lot of-
engineering
do we
testimony.
have more questions?
I just have a quick
Well,
question.
Well, it's for this particular question, if I would, Mr.
I can swear him in, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
He's going to give us a... Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to God or affirm testimony about to give us the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I did.
And name and address, please, and your relationship to
Actually,
the applicant.
would you approach the microphone, please?
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the planning board. My name is Derek Jess, 45 Sycamore Street, Somerville, New Jersey. I'm the school business administrator for the Summit Board of Education. Currently, there are no lights planned. We've had many conversations with some neighbors, and they were against it. The conduit that we're putting into the field is for low voltage electrical for security cameras and things of that nature. Should it be deemed appropriate in the future where we would need to put lighting in, if that's a decision, then we would, of course, come back to this body to discuss it, to provide the planning, provide all the information that we could. But right now, it's not in the budget for that project, and there was no apparent need right now for that for the high school needs.
Thank you.
Would you accept the condition of notifying residents
Absolutely.
in a future?
Oh, absolutely, yes,
Okay.
because I know that as Councilman Hamlet said, that is a very hot button topic, and so of course we would notify the neighbors if there's going to be lighting.
And so
anything
you'd
like that.
subscribe to the 200-foot notice as well as the publication, the usual notice if it were a variance application?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's great.
Anything else at this time?
I just had a quick question.
Sure.
Is this a regulated size field?
It is, yes, for soccer. It's going to, the sports that are going to be played there are going to be soccer, lacrosse, no football.
Okay.
Field hockey,
Okay.
there is going to be a baseball field, but it's only going to be for Summit Softball and Baseball League. We're going to let the little guys play on that, and it's going to be in the, if I'm looking up from North Avenue, please forget me if I do not get the appropriate direction, but if I'm on Morris Avenue looking up towards the high school, it's going to be in the upper left-hand corner. There are going to be muted lines for football, but it's not going to be used for football. It's going to be used for marching band to come out and practice out there as well.
So a home run from that field would go over the,
It's not, because it's for like the 6, 7, 8-year-old kids, so they're not going to be able to reach that fence out there. And there's not going to be, the high school will not be practicing on that field, nor will they be having any baseball or softball games on that field. It's strictly going to be for SSBL League to play on.
Mr. Jess, quick. I pick up my daughter from high school there almost every day, and on the corner, right where the architect's office is, right across from Bedford. Director Schrager, I think you tell me there is a crosswalk there, but it's not painted. We've asked Union County to paint that crosswalk there. Every day, I see a near miss from a high school kid, and my true and genuine #1 concern with this project is, I'm okay with the turf. My kids don't play on turf, but I understand why we need the turf fields. But I actually sat at the architect's office the other day because I wanted to just get my eyes on these kids crossing. And no matter where you tell the kids to cross, That's where they're crossing. They're not crossing down. And I would implore all of us to, number one, ask Union County if they can expedite that crosswalk. But my number one concern with doing this consistency review is my anxiety with these young kids, no matter where they cross. And I've shared my concerns with the superintendent. I don't know how we solve it, but we got to solve it, because I don't want to be sitting here saying that I didn't say it. I implore you to have your staff take a look at this, and obviously the city can help you, but I think I took 5 videos the other day of kids darting across. No matter where we tell them to cross, they're crossing at Bedford. And this is just going to exacerbate it, so I don't know what the answers are, but this is my concern with not doing a safety study. I don't know how we fix that, Mr. Warner, with a consistency review, but it is a genuine concern that I have as a new planning member, but as a council member who is concerned about their residents.
Thank you. I mean, we've discussed this many times, and, you know, we'll continue to work with the city on how we can certainly keep all of our kids and everybody that crosses there safe. You know, we're more than willing to sit down and continue that discussion and work for a good solution for everybody.
Yeah, so I had a question. So it sounds like a little bit more intensive use of the field based on the sports that you were saying. What are the thoughts and the analysis that have been done around traffic, circulation of pedestrians on the back of the comments that?
And so my understanding is that there's no parking on Morris Avenue in front of that, and the way the school district sees it now is that the gate will be open in the morning and the afternoon to allow students ingress and egress, so they can walk from Morris Avenue up to the school at the beginning of the day, and then we'll lock the gates so that nobody will be able to come up that way, and then at the end of the day, we'll allow kids to walk back to Morris Avenue. We're gonna put signs on the fence that are gonna be adhered to the fence, which say no parking, and please come up through Weaver Street to the high school parking lot, where parents should be dropping off their children anyway, as opposed to clogging up the neighbor's driveway or parking on Morris Avenue and causing a traffic hazard. So we're gonna do what we can to hopefully direct everybody to come up to Morris Avenue, drop their children off, have their children walk down towards that field for sporting events, whether it's children, whether it's spectators, so that they can, you know, park safely and we don't have to worry about Morris Avenue.
Got it. So basically infilling from the top level of the
Correct.
park, and there's parking capacity there
There
based
is,
on your.
yes, we have, especially after school and on weekends when we're not in session, there's plenty of parking available up
But how
top there.
about during school, which is
Well,
obviously the
during
high peak.
school, not, but during school, the only people that may be using it are people like the athletes for gym, you know, students for gym and things like that. It won't be until after school or on the weekends when we'll probably see an influx of other people utilizing that. And by that time, our parking lots should be empty.
So
And the
there's enough
students
time
get out
between, like-
between
yeah.
2:30 and 3 o'clock anyway, so right when 3 o'clock hits, the parking lot is usually empty as well.
Okay. And in terms of locking and unlocking, you were talking about that. Will the field be, how many entrance points? There's, what, 2 entrance points? One, the emergency that was talked about from Morris Ave.
Correct.
As well as from the main, the upper level
Correct.
field?
Yes.
And will they be locked during the weekends, or is this field going to be open until the rest of the community, just like Tatlock and the other fields and
The field will be open to the
BOEs.
community, but I believe it's our goal to make sure that parents and pedestrians and students don't continue to park and block Morris Avenue, to keep that gate locked so that we can direct them and funnel them to the top of the field and have them enter from that way.
When you say
Excuse me?
gate, you just mean the gate to the field, not the gate to the walkway that, you know, because kids are flowing back and forth through there
Right.
all the time.
We're looking for a safe solution to allow the kids to come back and forth from school, but also to stop, you know, the inflow of people just coming during the day or coming on weekends and clogging that area. So we're still working on that, but that's what our original thoughts were.
So you're imagining people walking, I mean, driving on your.
No, not driving, only walking. We get
Okay.
complaints that people are parking on Morris Avenue in front of the field
Understood.
and going into 412 and blocking
Right.
their driveway. And our goal is to try to stop that.
Mhm.
And so by keeping the gate locked and saying you need to take your child up Weaver, drop
Yeah.
them off at the high school and allow them to walk down, hopefully that will help.
How does locking the gate near Morris Avenue, how does that work in an emergency situation?
In emergency situation, our custodians are there, so they will have the keys to that. We'll also make sure that the emergency police and fire have keys, because they have keys to all of our schools as well. And any of our gates that we have, we try to make sure that they have keys and entry access for that also.
Is it locked now?
I don't believe it's locked now.
No.
It is not.
Just so you know, I mean, there's a whole swath of town that's on that side, that all of our kids, I live on that side, are back and forth, so I don't know if locking's gonna work. I think it'll be
Well, we'll
more
certainly-
harm than good, potentially. You'll give it a shot, see what
Well,
happens. You'll get a
I'll
lot of
definitely
phone
take
calls.
that back to Superintendent Huff and.
Then the
let
kids
him
are gonna
know.
be climbing I mean, they just you need to have
Spikes.
pedestrian
She's trying to say put
access.
spikes on the fence.
Yeah, I don't think that's gonna work too well.
I don't think so.
We have a non-compliant wall and fence. That's usually a variance, but this is a courtesy review, so.
That's what we have. That's a subject for another conversation.
All right, because you just mentioned variance a minute ago, so I was
Well,
like,
they said variance, there's a variance reference in one of the reports for steep slopes, but we were utilizing the term to mean a deviation from the
Okay,
ordinance.
okay.
The ordinance is not
and so
applicable.
the wall and the fence are another deviation, thank you.
Apparently exceed the height
Got it.
requirement, maximum, I should say.
So what's like the seating capacity of the bleachers that are being installed? How many rows?
I believe 100 people. They're gonna be 2 rows each, so there'll be 4 2-row bleachers. So it's not gonna be super high. It'll be very low to the ground.
Got it. And you mentioned there's gonna be the scoreboard on the.
Correct.
On the non-Morris Ave facing side.
Yeah, on the school
Eh,
side.
Right, on the school side, and just can you, for everybody, how big will it be? What type of lighting's used?
I
Will it
think
be kept on?
we
Only used
submitted-
during what times, things like that?
We submitted a rendering
Yep.
of the scoreboard. It's fairly simple.
Does it have dimensions?
Yes. It is 192 inches. Hold on, that's excuse me. Aluminum.
24 by
Yeah,
192.
24 by 192 it says, by 8.8 inches wide. And there's no sound associated with it, it's not LED. So it's just a basic scoreboard, radio controlled.
If we have no more questions, Mr. Jess?
Yes.
Oh,
Oh, you do?
So I just wanted to confirm, Mr. Jess, that the conduit, so I don't get beat up at a council meeting all week long next week, is for low voltage lighting and security.
Correct.
There's
There's
nothing else.
nothing in there right now for.
Right now,
any- right.
but let me.
Well, we.
Because once we leave here tonight,
No,
if you
no,
put the
there's nothing
conduit,
right now. but
everybody's
we
gonna
have
blame
to-
me.
Right, well, we have asked Ms. Kenderdine and her firm to provide us with what a cost estimate would be if we were to put electricity underneath the field. But there are no plans to do that, and there is no money in the budget for this project to do that. So it will just be low voltage for security cameras, and that's it.
And can I just go back to safety? So who's responsible in a consistency review for the safety study? I'm just still struggling with the safety piece of it. Can anybody opine on that question?
What do you mean by
Yeah.
safety study?
Kids crossing the street, balls going into the street.
traffic
looks like
study
a
for
traffic
that?
study.
For
Why
increased
does the
traffic
city
with
get a
this
pass
use.
on that? I'm just curious. Again, I'm new here, but it's a very serious concern that we haven't done a safety study. And, I think it's an important question, and I don't know the answer, but it's a tough spot.
Well, I
Yeah,
think-
it's already a tough spot, yeah.
Well, I think that's something that we, as a board, want to discuss further, and we want to investigate our options in terms of what more we can do in working with the town and figuring out if we can reach a new situation where the board has authority to weigh in on these things. Because at the moment, we're only entitled to courtesy reviews. And
And this, just to be clear, is the school board, not the city per
Not the city.
se, that's
Understood.
making, the Board of Ed that's making this application. They're subject to a different statute that gives the requirement of oversight to the state.
Mm.
So if and when there's a discussion
So
about.
this would not even be considered a capital project of the city. This would be-
If and when the city may decide to subject itself to additional obligations, that's one thing, but
It's a
the
great
school board,
opportunity.
is under a separate statute, so I don't want anybody to operate under false
No, we shouldn't
assumptions.
operate under any false pretenses, but we do want to
wanna look
investigate
into
our
it.
options.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Warner? So the city council approves the bond. Are there specific, the project's changed a little bit, right? We had a permanent dugout when we approved the bond. Now we have,
No, the main project as approved is what we're doing right now.
okay, but I guess my question is, could we have said we will only approve the bond if we did a safety study? Are there things that we could have done at that time that now I'm looking at and saying, I wish we would have done a safety study?
Probably a good question for the city attorney.
Okay.
At the
the
city
planning board
council
attorney.
level, because
Okay.
it's funded,
But,
right?
so I don't know the answer to that question. I could just tell you from a zoning jurisdictional standpoint, NJSA 18A:18A-16 is what governs school facilities. And I believe it's the State Department of Education that has the authority over the location of such facilities. And we have, as mentioned, under Section 31A, the courtesy review opportunity with respect to consistency with the master plan. And the cases and the statute says very specifically the board's role is strictly recommendatory. So we have that law to deal with. That's why I'm here.
I think that answers the question for now. Thank you, Mr. Jess.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Kendra, if you'd like to complete, I think you were on 7.
Believe, yes. Comment number 7 on the engineer's memo recommends coordination with the city forester, which we have already stipulated. Comment number 8 is regarding the outlet devices of the trash rack chamber. We will correct that discrepancy and resubmit to the engineer. Number 9, I guess, is in coordination with number 7. A tree removal and replacement plan must be submitted. We can certainly put something together in coordination with the city forester, put something together. I believe the school district is going to be taking on the landscaping as a separate project than the actual turf, so we have some time to hammer out those details, because obviously the landscaping will happen at the back end of the project. Comment number 10, an operations and maintenance manual for the stormwater management facility must be submitted. We will comply. And number 11, provide testimony to confirm the specific synthetic turf layer intended is porous. It is.
Thank you. Moving along, do you have any, what's next in your presentation?
Unless you want me to specifically go through any other of the comments that were
We would.
provided.
Yeah, sure.
I think that the only one that had significant comments was the engineer. Excuse me while I,
Let's see what else we have.
I have a memo here from the fire chief dated March 4th. And the comment is build to code, which we will do. I don't see any comments from the police chief. I have a report dated March 4th from the construction official regarding building permits required for any walls greater than 4 feet high. That will be obtained by the contractor, any building permits that are required. I believe he's already submitted that, actually, and just waiting on zoning approval. All of the required handrails or guardrails required by code are included on the plan, and the proposed permits, the proposed construction will meet all ADA requirements. We're required, as part of the contractor's contract, we require that he perform a full topographic survey of the entire constructed property at the end of construction, so we can verify that everything is ADA compliant before we close out the project. The last comment on the construction officials memo says plans and permit required for fences over 6 feet in height, showing footing details and wind load calculations. We can submit those as part of the permit application. The next comment or report is from the city forester, and I believe we've already addressed their comments. And he has already met with our contractor on the site to go over his recommendations for landscaping and tree removal. I don't see any comments from the health department. There's only one application from the Historic Preservation Committee, and that's just stating that the proposed ornamental fence along Morris Avenue is consistent with the neighborhood, and they take no exception. The Environmental Commission report, I believe we've already addressed that comment regarding the obviously synthetic turf as opposed to existing grass. Excuse me. And then the last memo, is from Burgess, correct? And I'm not sure if there were any comments per se. There was just a planning summary. So was there any specific comment that should be addressed?
I just have a quick question on the comments from Burgess. If you go to section 4, number 2, walls and fencing.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Point number 2. So there's actually some, and maybe you mentioned it before, apologies. So there's entranceways that are being closed off. Then it says the northernmost corner of the field along Morris Ave has been eliminated. Is that accurate? The existing gate on Morris Ave will
Yes, it's being replaced.
The existing fence opening at the northernmost corner of the field is going away, correct?
Yes.
So we're reducing from what, 3 ways to enter the field to 2, and we're locking one of them for, is that
Yeah,
correct?
there's a gate off Morris Avenue, just a single gate. It's a double wide though. It's 12 feet wide for emergency access. And then there is, I believe there's access here as well. There's a gate proposed, or I think that's an existing gate.
Where is here?
Sorry, the southwest
The high school side?
corner on the high school side, northern high school side. And there is a gate on the southern high school side as well. So 2 points of access from the high school, 1 point of access to Morris Avenue.
But then again, to everyone, that pedestrians, not cars, right? People that are
Correct.
walking, that live in town where it's a
Yes,
small town,
there
it's
is-
very dense. So people that are northern of the field will have to walk all the way around to enter the field. And when the other entrance on Morris Ave is locked, they'll have to continue walking down Kent Place, around the school and into. Okay.
Correct.
Yeah.
To the vice chair's point, I think that's gonna potentially create some.
It'll affect some people's dog walking schedules.
Yes.
And a lot of students.
At a minimum.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's, anything else to summarize? Or, all right, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yep. Are there public questions will be taken?
We can
Or is
ask.
that-
This is a public hearing, so
Was there
yes.
anything further from Mr. Schrager or the planner that we wanted to address? I don't know, anything we missed?
Professionals.
I do have a few comments,
Oh,
if that's
please.
okay. Just to summarize, in our memo, just so we understand though, it is a major project, so while this might be a courtesy review, items 1, 8, 10, and 11 really ultimately need to be certified by Ms. Kenderdine that they are meeting it, and then ultimately next year or 2 years from now, depending on when the project's completed, I have to certify that not only did the project meet what was certified, but that the city enforced all of the stormwater management rules we have. So the stormwater isn't necessarily courtesy, which might give some relief to adjacent property owners and the board itself. I did have a few questions just on the constructability, which might be better for Mr. Jess, but first would just be in a perfect world, like what is the timeline of the project? Like when would they be looking to start? How long is the field going to take to construct? That's,
Do you want to answer? Okay.
The contractors indicated that they are ready to mobilize and get started as soon as permits are issued, so as soon as 2 weeks from now, with the completion date towards the end of the summer.
okay. And then I had just some further, which really be for Ms. Kenderdine on the drainage itself, because there is a buried manhole, which I missed in the original review, which is being labeled as to identify in field, and I think once it's located, it could have a significant impact to just the layout of the drainage. And that's a slight concern because the uphill drainage system, not downhill or uphill isn't, in amazing shape, so we want to make sure. But if it's a buried manhole, likely it was buried because you don't want a manhole in the middle of a playing field, obviously. So that's something where when it's located, we might need a new drainage design. But what I can do is that the city did just obtain a new sewer camera truck that has a locator on it. So with permission, if there's no field scheduling, I would like to get the city out there sooner than later to at least find that, because I think the location of that and the inverts within it will greatly impact what the drainage design, the final, looks like. So I don't know how we memorialize there, if I've just thrown it out now.
And then your department would review it if it got changed?
We would provide the information to Ms. Kenderdine. We'll also be able to see if that does impact some of the drainage design that's currently being presented. Because if the depth of our existing drainage line is depending on what the depth is, it might need to be relocated, which would change their design, or it might be fine. But either way, there is a manhole buried in the field that needs to be addressed.
In the event it needs to be changed, then you will review it? Who will review the change in design?
That would be us, yes,
Good.
internally.
So would the applicant stipulate to allowing
That'd be
the
great.
camera?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Mr. Schrager has a very good working relationship with the district, and Mr. Martino, our Director of Facilities, and he collaborate a lot, so absolutely. All he has to do is reach out to Mr. Martino, and we'll get it done.
And by the time the resolution's drafted and that condition's in there, it may have already
It may
been
have
done.
already been
But
done, correct.
to carry it forward, I take it the applicant will also stipulate that to the extent any stormwater management plans need to be amended, they will be so accordingly and remain subject to the review and approval of our city engineer.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions?
Through you, Mr. Chairman. Director Schrager, I think there was 3 or 4 lines. I can't remember exactly all of the drainage. Do you remember the last time they were inspected? I think I went over that on email with you today. I just can't, or will you just take care of that when you do all the cammering for all those lines?
We'll take care of it. I don't remember, because periodically through some concerns in that area, we have done cleaning and inspecting of it, and nothing's ever been found to be catastrophically wrong or anything. I mean, some of it is older, but within a decade. But now, I mean, the camera truck literally just arrived 2 weeks ago, so my staff's definitely excited to play with it. But this is a good one in the middle of the field, so we don't have traffic. They can go out and just take a look at upstream and downstream to the next structure. So.
Great, thank you.
Senator Johnson?
I just wanted to answer the question before regarding comments that we had and whether those were addressed. I do believe they were all addressed, but for the sake of clarity, I'll just list them.
Yes, of course.
On page 4 of our memo, under number 6, tree removal,
This is Burgess, everybody.
the applicant should discuss how disturbance along the northerly line might impact screening for the adjacent multifamily use, and if any screening is proposed to mitigate impacts to surrounding residential development. I do believe we discussed that regarding the borders with both residential developments. And skipping to page 6, under planning summary. The applicant should provide justification for proposed field expansion in this area of the site. regarding the reduced side buffer, regarding the reduced northerly side buffer to accommodate the size of the field, and regarding how it relates to standard field dimensions and becoming a regulation size field. So I guess that was our question. I believe you touched on that, but maybe if you could just say a little bit more regarding a justification for the expansion of the field in order to.
Right, the expansion of the field is mainly to accommodate minimum playing fields and the overplay associated with those. So it's not just the minimum playing fields per the National Federation of High School Sports Associations, but it's also the overplay area. There's minimum overplay areas for players, obviously in case people run past the line. So we are trying to provide sort of standard field sizes in a non-standard width of the area. So that's the reason for the retaining wall and why we're expanding the field the way we are.
Okay, thank you. And did you want me to discuss the portion of the memo regarding master plan consistency, or?
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
please.
What's that?
That'd be fine. Thank you.
Okay, great. So regarding consistency with the 2000 master plan and also referencing the 2016 reexamination report, there are several applicable land use goals, objectives, and policies. For example, the first one being maintain and upgrade the availability of community resources for residents through modern, efficient, and strategically located facilities, including libraries, hospitals, recreation facilities, emergency services, schools, community centers, senior centers. Number two, not necessarily but to promote a desirable visual environment through creative and flexible development techniques with respect to environmental assets and constraints of the city. Next, to provide community services which address the changing demographic characteristics of the population, schools, daycare facilities, recreation facilities, senior centers. And next, to coordinate the construction of improvements with the city's capital improvement program so that community facilities are available when needed. And lastly, to efficiently use school facilities where possible, both as schools and recreational resources. And that's regarding the master plan, regarding the 2016 reexamination report, encouraging low-impact development and green technologies in all new and existing buildings, infrastructure, and capital projects.
Thank you. Does this consider using green technologies?
I would defer to the city engineer on that, but it's something that's recommended.
The fact that they're recharging the water does, I mean, ideally, you'd like to see something better bioswales, bioretention, but you also, the nature of an athletic field, it's hard to collect the water and treat it any other way. So it is going back and there is recharging, so that does count as green infrastructure.
All right. Thank you.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Please.
Just trying to get any green, because there is a significant amount of green buffer between, to Mr. Burgess, your point, Burgess's point. How much extra width do you have on the northern portion? Can it be diminished at all? Because the difference between 3 feet and 5 feet to plant something is a big difference. But I don't know if that's feasible, but it makes the 20-foot, the 10-foot wall plus the 20-foot fence, it's going to be hard, it's going to be challenging to get any landscaping, meaningful landscaping in that area at that width.
Yeah, we wouldn't have proposed the 20-foot high wall if we could make it work any other way.
Right, no, I'm
So
saying
but I
diminishing the
don't
width
think
of
there's any-
the, because you said there's this extra play space, which I didn't understand before.
The
Can you
overplay,
diminish it at
yes,
all?
but the overplay is dictated by the same standards that dictate the size of the fields. We can't
So that's a
decrease that.
standard.
That's a standard.
It's not just a fungible that, based on
Correct.
conditions.
No, there are minimum requirements for overplay areas.
And the whole thing can't be shifted a little, because it's more parking lot on the south, you can see it's a lot of parking lot, so it's not the same loss. on the south side as much, even though this section should stay landscaped. This part is not, you're not losing as much. Can the whole thing be shifted a little bit just to give you something to landscape on the
I
top?
think the walkways on the south side are sized to minimum requirements for ADA and for pedestrian access. So I don't think there's any good way to shift it.
Yeah, okay.
Jen, I have a comment to yours to supplement.
Yeah.
On the overplay areas that you were talking about, in the way that they're configured right now, is there any sort of cushioning or buffer that's there? What is the overplay area?
The overplay area is, there's the limit of the actual field.
Right.
And then typically there's at least a 10-foot buffer between the field and any obstacle.
And so what
That's
happens when
dictated.
that overplay area gets to the edge? What's going on there?
There's, most likely there's a fence typically there.
So where I'm going with this, is there a scenario where an overplay area isn't something like a 10-foot area with a fence at the end, but I'm making up a number, a 5-foot area with a significant cushion or padding?
No, I don't believe so. I don't think there's any padding in the design. I can take a look
Well,
and
I'm saying is
re-review
that
it, but
feasible, not is it in the plan, but is it something that could be done in lieu of, to Jen's point about changing the overplay area, is there another solution that both serves to maybe protect the players, but also allows for a little more space between the adjacent
so
property?
are you saying you want to decrease the overplay area
Yeah,
from 10
that's what
feet
I'm
to
saying.
5
I'm
feet?
saying, could you
Okay,
increase
then-
the overplay area by
To
instead of-
accomplish the same purpose, but with cushioning.
Exactly.
And therefore
instead of
use, and
space.
therefore be able to use a narrower space. And
no,
therefore
no,
you could bring the
it's-
wall in and have more
It's
landscaping.
any obstacle. So whether it has padding on it or not,
Okay.
it's any obstacle. It has to be a clear space, that 10-foot overplay area.
Okay. Thank you. Okay.
We have comments from the public?
Chairman, we'll start with questions first.
Did we have more? Questions?
questions from the
Sorry,
public.
I'm sorry, the way it works is you have an opportunity to question the witnesses on particular pieces of testimony that you heard, as opposed to making generalized commentary.
Well, I would like to ask some questions if I may, please. I'm William, is that okay, we ready to go?
Yeah, just again, your name and who you represent for the record.
I'm William Conley, and I represent the Summit Housing Authority.
Thank you, Mr.
Do I get your name right? Tenderdyne, is it?
Kenderdine.
Kenderdyne, thank you very much. Ms. Kenderdyne, I think I'm a little confused about the testimony about the northern side of the property. The wall that you were discussing, which was that modular block wall, that's a 10-foot wall or 12-foot?
I think it's up to 12 feet.
Yeah, that's what I thought,
Yes.
that's what I was told
Yes.
from my notes. And then on top of that, there's a 10-foot chain link fence, correct?
Correct.
So if you look at the property now, that northern border, which is between the district's property and the Summit Housing Authority's property, there's actually 2 fences there. One is on the Summit Housing Authority property. It's much lower, probably, and then as you go to the district's property, probably about almost 20 feet in
Okay.
from where we are. There's an existing fence as well. It's a chain link fence, right? Between the 2 properties, there's a great deal of the trees and densities, a lot of tangle and so forth. It looks kind of ugly. So the fence that you're talking about, the 12-foot fence, that, not fence, but the wall, the retaining wall, where does that start? Does that start where the existing district fence is located, or are you going to bring it down? So where's the 12-foot stop?
So,
They don't
You
have
can
the
see
same
on-
context as well.
there's no good way to. So on the plan I'm looking at, which is the existing conditions plan, sheet C-1.0.
Yeah.
On the northern side, that is the fence for the Summit Housing Authority.
Okay.
That's the existing. This
Here
is
it
the
is.
existing fence for the field. There's a line right here.
So it does look
So
like,
it's-
okay,
It's on the top of the slope.
right, top of the
Right.
slope.
So this slope is going away. We are filling in that slope.
So if I could stop you there.
Mm-hmm.
The slope, the fence that you're referring to, which is on the Summit Housing Authority side, there has to be, the property, that is on the exact property line between the district's property and the Summit Housing Authority property?
It looks to be close to that. I don't think we did a survey to actually determine that, but it is staying in place,
So,
that fence.
well, I would think it has to,
Yes.
right? Okay, so there is a significant, as you've already said, slope dropping down from the district's property down to the Summit Housing Authority property.
Correct.
So that slope is going to be taken out, so that therefore there will be, if you come from the Summit Housing Authority fence, you actually traverse straight out, the elevation would go straight out and then up with the fence?
It'll probably be sloped a little bit and then vertical
Okay.
for the wall.
So it's a 12-foot retaining wall, and of course, there are 30 families living there in the Summit Housing Authority building, and that's their backyard, really. So they'll be looking at a 12-foot masonry block type of retaining wall, and on top of that, there'll be a chain link fence. So what we have right now is we have a buffer, if you would. The buffer is the slope itself, and the buffer is also the trees which are in between the two properties. And so that buffer of the slope and the trees are going to be removed. So we'll be looking at, our residents will be looking at a retaining wall, essentially. I know that you mentioned there's going to be landscaping done there.
Yes.
And it looks to me like it needs a fair amount of landscaping in order for that to have an aesthetic look. It was referred to, I think, as a softer, I think someone said it was a softer look or something like that, because we would like to make sure that our residents are able to look out their backyard and not just see a huge block wall. So can you tell us something about what's going to be done in that location so that we lose the slope, which is part of our buffer, if you would, and we lose the trees, which is part of our buffer as well?
Right, there's no set plan in place at this point, but I know the school district is looking to work with the city forester to come up with a plan that's acceptable along there. Like I said before, I don't think trees are going to fit in the area, but we can certainly go with some lower shrubs to soften the impact. And it should be noted that the wall is not 12 feet for the entire length. It will get higher with the slope, but it ranges from about 6 feet to 12 feet. So it's not going to look as much like a cliff, I think, as what you're picturing.
Okay, that's very helpful. As far as the retaining wall itself, you mentioned, of course, it's going to be some sort of modular block wall.
Correct.
Will there be any opportunity for the people from the Summit Housing Authority to have at least a say? And I understand it's your wall and you're paying for it, okay? And we don't want to hurt Mr. Jess's budget, of course, but just in terms of overall appearance, might we have some possibility of a say in doing that?
Well, we can certainly share with you the type of block that we're going to use and the color so that you can see exactly what it looks like.
Just, Mr. Jess, that would be very helpful, because cooperation would be welcome. We'd like that a lot. Then,
I know.
you mentioned, I think when you started off your testimony, that there was going to be a small two-tier bleacher. I didn't quite understand. Was that going to be on the side, the northern side, or is it on the other side?
The other side.
Okay.
It's
so
on the
that was-
southern side.
Very good. And the scoreboard, although I understand the numbers are going to be lit up, is it going to be otherwise lit up as well with overhead lights or anything like that?
No, I don't believe so, no. No, and it's important to note there's no audio on the sign either.
There is.
On the scoreboard,
That is going to be important. And I welcome Mr. Jess's comments. Apparently, it's not going to be football there, because if you ever go to a football game, there's an awful lot of noise and excitement and so forth. And if you ever go to your kid's soccer game or field hockey game, they're not quite the same. So hopefully that will also be part of any consideration that this board's going to take with this application, or at least the recommendation and so forth. There's also, Mr. Jess, because you have been sworn, so I guess I get to ask you a question. The fence which runs along the northern border, which is on the Summit Housing Authority side, if you look at that fence, the growth from that area is really entangled throughout that fence. Looks pretty disgusting. There's also a huge tree that came down, I don't know if you're aware of that, that broke our fence. And I would hope that maybe when you do all the work you're going to be doing in that area, I would think you would want to have it as well, have that area look as nice as possible. One of the things that would make it look nice as possible is if the tree which fell from the district's property onto our fence and broke our fence might possibly get repaired.
Yeah, I will absolutely have Mr. Martino look into that, yes.
That would be really good. A few more questions, if I may. You mentioned about the water, you're going to use the existing water, stormwater management system and expand upon that?
Correct. Well, we're leaving the existing in place. We're expanding it for the additional stormwater.
So the field right now is actually like a soccer field or a field
Mhm.
hockey field, right?
Correct.
So is the stormwater system just a runoff, a direction of runoff of water from that, or is there pipes and other things located?
No, there will be a full pipe system beneath the turf field. There won't be any overland runoff from the turf field.
Yep.
All of the stormwater that hits the turf field will get collected by the under drain system below it, and then will drain into a series of large plastic chambers that will store the water beneath the turf field.
Will that involve in any way the retaining wall that's going to be built there as well, so that water is going to be directed along our
No.
retaining wall?
No, the proposed stormwater management system is actually going to be constructed on the opposite side of the existing pipe system from where the wall is proposed.
Very good. Okay. Just one second. Do I have any other questions? Hold on, just one second. I got it. When you, Mr. Jess, when you do your forestry report and so forth, we would also hopefully have some cooperation and communication between yourselves and the Summit Housing Authority about where trees are going to be and what we can do to make the whole area more beautified. Is that okay? Thank you very much.
Hi, Leslie Salcido. We're the owners on the other side of you guys, 412 Morris Avenue. One of the questions I do have for Mr. Jess, I know we spoke. Can you just confirm that gate, is it going to be locked on the weekends or is it going to be opened?
Currently, the plan is to lock it on the weekend, so that.
Mr. Jess, would you speak into a microphone?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I'm always accused of having a big mouth, so I apologize. Currently, the plan is to keep that gate locked on the weekends, so that, as I mentioned earlier, that parents will have to drive up to the top of the field and drop their students off there.
The other question I have regarding the field, because currently right now it's being used for lacrosse and soccer on the weekends. What is the timing of when this field will now be used? Are we going longer to the day on the weekends, on the weekdays? Is there a time constraint?
Mr. Chair, for what I'd like to ask Mr. Warner if he would swear in Dan Healy. He's our athletic director, and so he can better speak to the usage of the field and the times and things, if that would please the committee. Not to drag this out any longer, but if you would, please, thank you.
I'm sure he'll be quick.
Please raise your right hand, sir. Do you swear to God or affirm that the testimony about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Should I introduce myself as well?
Please.
Formally? Dan Healy, Athletic Director, Summit High School. For the record, 65 Dayton Crescent, Bernardsville, New Jersey. The answer to your question is for Summit Athletics and the use of this field at post-project will not change. So we are looking at, again, for the high school use or Summit Athletic use for the public schools, we're looking at after school predominantly after school in the fall and the spring. Maybe a little later in the day, because again, the whole goal of this project was to optimize the existing use of the field. So whereas practices right now and games might be finishing up 4:35, 5:30, perhaps to 6 on the weekend, or sorry, the weekdays, that would be one change. For the weekends, for us, predominantly the field is used on Saturday mornings, rarely, if ever, Sundays. Predominantly Saturday mornings. One exception that we have, everyone, just so you're aware, is that sometimes we push athletic practices and contests on Saturdays to later on in the afternoon as a result of SAT and ACT testing. The one caveat I'll also add is that this field, as I think you're discussing, is also used by the town and the Department of Community Programs. Expanded use on that front is certainly possible and anticipated, but I can't speak to that. But for Summit Public Schools and our use, it would be fairly consistent with what it is with some moderate expansion, as I've already outlined.
The other question I had, has there been anything done to reduce the noise? Turning this into turf, obviously, is going to be an issue. We have 57 units on our side. Currently, the other side has 30. Turning this turf, it's going to get louder for us. Is there anything that's going to be done to reduce the noise for us?
There's nothing in the design that's specific to noise reduction.
I mean, we're 30 feet away from you guys.
You can just swear her in for testimony.
With the chair's permission, I could swear you in. There's always some
Oh, that was just
statement of
comment. It's
fact
okay.
in the context of questioning, so that's why I allow it unless
Well,
the chair. But if you want to say anything
No,
more.
I'll reserve it for the comment
Okay.
section, but,
Thank you.
yeah, that was
We
just
could
the last
ask
question,
Aaron
was
if there's
comment.
anything that could,
Yeah.
I mean, do you know of anything that can be done for noise, other than maybe more plantings, more trees?
Yeah, not specifically outside of like a buffer, whether it's a noise wall or plantings.
We have any more questions from the public?
Did you say comments, sir?
Questions? Hello.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you. Lisa Allen, 125 Blackburn Road. Just a couple questions. So going through the master plan, and I've met with Mr. Jess, so thank you. A couple things. Goal 1 is to guide, because we're talking about a consistency, right, for tonight. So a guide to develop is to maintain and enhance the character of Summit, maintain a dynamic and vibrant city, which I think our sports does. But we also want to improve connectivity between people and places to promote a healthy and vibrant community. And we want to promote a city that's welcoming to its residents and builds resiliency and preserves and enhances the natural beauty of open space and community facility. So I'm not against the turf. I think what I'd like to hear, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear from home because it was going in and out. Do I have to look at you, Chairman, or can I ask a question directly?
You're asking a question, so you can direct
Okay.
it to the witness.
So did you say softball is going to be played there? Did I hear that incorrectly?
Just Little League softball, from what I understand.
For practice? Yeah, go ahead.
Now, there's no high school baseball or softball on the field. It's only going to be for SSBL for them to utilize.
Because I definitely was concerned about the balls flying in the street. And in terms of keeping a open field for our town, from the wall perspective, what's the height of the wall on Morris Avenue?
There's no wall proposed on Morris Avenue. There's a fence. Hold on one second.
There's a decorative fence.
Yeah, it's a decorative metal fence, 7 feet high.
Okay, and it's 7 feet high. Okay, because I just wanted to make sure from a consistency perspective, do we have anything in town that is 7 feet high? Anywhere else that we would say that this is consistent with the look around a very busy street.
We did have a comment from.
It was historic preservation.
No, it was
Probably Burgess.
the property, let's see, it was the zoning officer. Hold on. I think. Fences up to 7 feet high are permitted as of right in a rear yard. I'm sorry, I need to find the comment. There was a comment that specifically said it was consistent with the area that it's being proposed.
Okay. It looks attractive. I would just say that 7 feet high going up, I don't know, what's the setback, do we know?
Is approximately 10 feet off the sidewalk.
Okay. I guess that would be consistent, 10 feet setback. Okay. So a 7-foot wall is pretty high as you're driving down, that when there's no other fences anywhere else, so I was just concerned about that. And then the other thing is it being locked. When you look at the master plan and consistency, it's really about creating open spaces, making sure there's access. And so I have concerns about, people ending up having to walk all the way around. Some of the kids that live in that neighborhood, they cross the street. So from a consistency perspective, I would hope that we would want to keep the doors open and welcoming. I would also worry that during the day, during school, if it's locked, if there is an emergency, I guess it could be as easy as pushing a button. It just feels like it's much more caged in than open. And the final question I have for you is the safety. I've heard this from the planning board tonight, making sure that there are crosswalks. I don't know, I haven't heard if anybody's worked with, maybe this is a question for our engineer, and if anybody has worked with Union County to ensure that we have done traffic studies. It's a very busy road on Morris Avenue. There's about 4 schools right in there. We need to make sure that our crosswalks are painted, newly created ones, beacons. So have we reached out to Union County to make sure that we are doing the appropriate safety and traffic studies?
So the Safety Committee last year did request that we add a formal crosswalk or a striped crosswalk at the intersection of Bedford and Morris, which would service this field. So it was approved by Safety to do the study. The study recommended one be installed. That's been sent to Union County. Union County is still reviewing it. So, and what you have, though a crosswalk exists at that intersection, it's not striped there. So the determination by Union County to stripe it would permit a crosswalk there.
Do they ask for the blinking light or just the crosswalk?
The request was just for a crosswalk at first. So they may come back with an approval, or they may not approve it. They may recommend also put a flashing beacon. But for right now, we just have to request it being actually physically permitted to stripe it there. So that is one thing we've done. We currently have a corridor study being done for Morris Avenue from top to bottom. The results of that are due in a couple of weeks, at least in draft format. So that might have some recommendations, but likely most of those will be at the signalized intersections because there are 13 over the 2-mile span. So that has been looked at. As for this project, as Ms. Kenderdine said before, there was no traffic study done. I think based on Mr. Healy's comments, the traffic impact, I don't think it'll be a lot of trip generations, but we are looking at it independently of that.
Thank you.
That's it. Thank you.
Actually, Lisa's question made me raise one question. I'm going to ask you, Lisa, to clarify. So when you're talking about on the Morris Avenue side, and we were talking about the fencing, so if you go towards the field where it's going to be built, looks like there's, and I'm going to get the number wrong, a 20-foot difference between the fencing and the northern or northeastern edge of the field. Is that, yes? So is that line going northwest? So at the very top corner, that's about a 12-foot wall.
Correct.
What's the decline going to the northeast or along Morris Avenue of that wall? No, I'm gonna point to it just to make it perfectly clear.
Watch your step.
If we said, going from here to here, what's the, I imagine this is pretty high over here. What's the
Yeah.
decline, what's the elevation decrease, if any?
This line here
Yep,
is
yeah.
not a wall.
It's not a
It
wall
is-
at all?
no.
Okay.
It is a curve. So if anything, it's gonna be maybe 6 inches high.
Okay.
The wall ends right about in here. This is where the wall ends, where it meets the existing slope, so we maintain that slope for the front part of the site.
Okay.
So this concrete curb is really meant as an attachment for the turf and also as a base for the ball catcher system. The netting that's gonna go on this end so that balls don't fly towards Morris Avenue.
So does the distance between the ball catching net and the line on Morris Avenue, is that a slight downward slope? What is the,
Yes.
and that will be natural terrain?
Correct.
And
This
how,
is-
and how many feet would that be
Wide.
wide? From
So,
ball catcher line to Morris Avenue?
From the ball catcher to the fence, it's about 100 feet.
So there's 100 feet of natural terrain
Correct,
sloping gently down, I guess you'd say?
correct,
And that's a buffer between the field itself and Morris Avenue?
correct.
All right.
Culminating in a nice fence.
Culminating in a nice
Which
7-foot
I do,
decorative fence.
well, no, it has the brick piers and then the fencing.
All right, great.
So it's, I appreciate your fence.
Any more
Seldom get
comments
that
from the
comment,
public
so-
while we're here?
Well, it
I'm-
sure
I'm
beats
sorry.
chain link.
We had questions.
Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Connolly. Any more questions from the public for these witnesses? And anything else? So I think we're ready for public comments. Yeah. All right.
Comments?
We're open to comments. Thank you, Mr. Connolly, again.
Again, I'm William Conley for the Summit Housing Authority. The Summit Housing Authority welcomes this application. They're in favor of seeing recreational facilities, sporting facilities be improved in this town, in this city. And they know that they are great supporters of youth sports. So we welcome Mr. Jess's comments that he will be a good neighbor for us. We promise you we'll be a good neighbor for you and hope to be able to work with you in cooperation on this facility. We wish you the best of luck.
And I'll swear you in if you'll raise your right hand. I didn't swear him in because as counsel, he's making representations on behalf of his client, just to be clear.
Sure.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to God or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes,
Please give your name and address.
sure. Leslie Salcido, 412 Morris Avenue. I'm on the condo board. I do not oppose this plan. I do have concerns about it. I appreciate the high school cooperating with us, finally. Dan Healy knows me way too well. Our biggest issue is when that lower field gets used, people park in our parking lot. So that, when this was first approached, I was concerned that we were gonna have weekends where, yet again, we can't get into our own place. It has gotten so bad, one time they actually put an ice cream truck in our driveway. Unfortunately, I've had to deal with the high school. I've had to call them, and usually the response from the high school is, it's not our people, so can't tell you what to do, and I would have to call the Summit Lacrosse team or one of whoever's using that field. So I do have concerns that I am now going to have a directory of additional numbers that I'm gonna need to know. So I understand your concern about not closing that gate. I'm gonna welcome it if it stops the parents from dropping their kids off. I mean, right now, they're picking their kids up from our parking lot every day on a week, from school and everything. And I'm being told that, oh, well, you guys chose to live near the high school. That's what you have to deal with. I'm sorry. That's not being good neighborly, Please do not consider putting lights on there. We already have stadium lights 30 feet away from our buildings. So I ask you, please do not even consider it, because how you guys got those stadium lights on the upper field, that close to our units, still boggles my mind, because those were apartments at that time. They were not individually owned, because if I owned them, I can guarantee you, I would have said something. Because at night, those lights are on. And I know I've spoken to you guys about it, and you said you turn it off at 9 o'clock. It never gets turned off at 9. And at the last council meeting, I was surprised where Mark said, oh, it shuts off at 9:30. It seems like that goalpost is being moved. So please do not consider putting the lights on. The other thing is, I'm okay with you guys taking the fence. If you guys want to take the whole fence, because it's pretty ugly, I'm fine with it as long as it's on your dime, if you guys want that fence. Because I believe the fence, it goes from our property to your property. That was what we were being told, like that fence goes along both of ours. So if you guys want that full fence, that's fine, but you guys have to pay for it. So those were my, oh, the other issue is the noise. If something could be done about the noise, because honestly, the loudest part is when the upper field is being used. We hear everything. And there is a concern that if the lower field now is gonna be turf, we're just gonna have more noise again. When that field is being used, we hear the screaming, we hear the noise. I appreciate the buzzer not being on the lower field scoreboard. I believe that's what you said, because we hear that buzzer from all the way near us. So I'm glad you guys are doing that. Again, I do not oppose this. I just wish certain things could be changed or help us out a little bit. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? All right. Hearing none, I mean, we're not doing a vote on this, so.
Well, there will be a vote with respect to the consistency with the master plan, and I have a list of stipulated recommendations. Once
So
they're
this is a vote
stipulated-
on the recommendation list.
Well,
Do you
correct.
want to read your recommendation?
I'll-
Sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
When the chair gives me the green light.
Oh, I think we'd all like to hear the list.
Okay, what I have is, if it's a motion to find that the project is consistent with the master plan and make the following recommendations, all of which, as I understand it, were stipulated to by the applicant. Those recommendations would be landscaping to soften the northerly side wall, subject to the review and approval of the city forester and with the input from the Summit Housing Authority. Number two, the Board of Ed will work in good faith and if, with the neighbors on this, with respect to the south side fence, and if necessary, repair same to the extent required. Also, with respect to the south side, subject to the review and approval of the city forester, there will be tree replacement as necessary. That actually may be on the north side, my apology.
I think it's on both. But
On
it-
both sides.
Just so you know, in case there, you could squeeze a tree in there.
And the contractor will be held responsible by the Board of Ed with respect to stormwater management and the adequacy of the stormwater management plan. In the event the applicant decides to install lighting, the applicant will return to the planning board, and the planning board will retain courtesy review jurisdiction over same, and the applicant will provide the 200-foot notice with respect to property owner's personal notice as well as notice by publication in the event there is such a return to the board for courtesy review as to any lighting.
I had a comment about the one before that, excuse me, the stormwater management. You said the contractor was responsible. I just want to stipulate that that's during construction.
During construction.
Yes. Thank you.
And the applicant will permit the city as soon as possible to have the sewer camera truck check these location of the buried manhole. And the applicant will, to the extent necessary, revise the stormwater management plan as a result of what's determined by that inspection. And all of that will be subject to the review and approval of our city engineer. The applicant will share the colors of the block wall with the Summit Housing Authority. The applicant will clear the brush and the fallen tree, and if necessary, repair the fence on the northerly side. And the Summit Housing Authority will be, oh, I already said that, never mind. And of course, all the conditions stipulated to in the engineer's memo, and to the extent the other memos or reports from departments and agencies of the city had comments. The only one not specifically stipulated to was the reconsideration request by the Environmental Commission, reconsider a grass field for a turf field. I take it it's assumed that the turf field is going to be installed.
Thank you, Mr. Warner. Do I have a motion to approve the planning board's list of recommendations? Oh, you have a question? Sorry.
Sorry, I think we may have missed a one or two.
Oh.
Can we add the, maybe I may have missed it, Mr. Warner, the soil conservation notification? That the applicant will notify soil conservation of the
Yeah,
start?
that
Okay.
was referenced in one of the reports,
Okay.
the engineer's report, but yes,
Okay.
that's a stipulated to condition.
And then I assume that the BOE will be responsible for stormwater management after construction? Is that what we're saying?
Correct. Contractor during construction, the applicant post-construction.
And then the only other thing I wanted to make sure of is whether or not the applicant will be submitting a new plan for the trees. I believe that was in here somewhere, but for the.
They're going to work with the city
Okay.
engineer to come up with a
The
plan.
city forester.
Tree replacement or removal?
City
Yeah,
forester.
Or
that's in
tree
the- that's in
removal
the
or
report.
replacement?
Okay,
Yeah, that was
Okay.
in the
In the
engineer's.
report.
Forester will look at non-tree solutions, that's my understanding.
right,
Yeah, which is the landscaping of the north and south
okay.
area.
Was it, sorry.
Any other comments or questions? Anything missed? All right, then I'll take a motion to approve this list of planning board recommendations, subject to the considerations and comments that we just made,
And it would be to determine that it's consistent with the master plan. Yeah.
and consistency with the master plan. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
All right.
Chairman Zucker,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Balsan Alvarez,
Yes.
Mr. Spur,
Yes.
Mr. Felmet,
Yes.
Councilmember Hamlet,
Yes.
Ms. McGee,
Yes.
Mr. Formicelli,
Yes.
Mr. Stern.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you very much for the presentation. We appreciate your patience. We're going to take a few minutes break. I'd say 5 minutes, but it never is that, so 7 minutes.
She didn't call.
No, I.
Right. Yeah.
from our January meeting, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. Then we're gonna have it's our turn to appoint 2 of our members to affordable housing. And then after that, we've got a discussion about the DRO and an update on affordable housing. And lastly, doing the minutes for approval. So why don't we jump into the adoption of the rules, which were circulated. It was a draft dated February 20th, 24, that everybody should have had in their packet. Hopefully you've had a chance to look them over. These are a restatement from our previous basic rules, setting up the structure of and rules under which the planning board operates. We'll note that there are proposed changes on page 2 and a little formatting change on page 5, that's negligible, and a more substantial addition on page 12,
Yeah.
stretching into page 13.
Yeah. I have a question on the page 13.
Well, let's start from the beginning.
Okay.
So, on page 2, that's it, 1:1-10, regarding removal of a member. We had a conversation about clarifying, the language, if you recall, seemed kind of vague and inconclusive about if a member was removed, that it could only happen after a public hearing. And we wanted to clarify that the board has the power to remove, or actually, for cause by the common council could remove a member, but only after a public hearing that would only be called if the person, that board member requested it. We wanted to clarify that there's not an automatic board public hearing on the matter, but rather it only happens, they're entitled to it if they request it. And that would be in accordance with MLUL. I still don't think this is the most artful wording, but it works.
Okay. That's a good change.
If anyone has any comments or questions on that, or we can move to the next point? All right. Yeah, I think it's just a formatting question on 5, so that's not an issue. Let's go to 12. All right, so here we talk about clarifying and expanding upon our ability to add conditions to applications, because I think this is something we all wanted to understand our abilities to do. This is by way of example, but not limitation. We put in A, B, and C, actually. I'm open to anybody's comments or questions on the wording.
I'm just wondering if we're doing conditions in an actual application, conditions are mandatory, recommendations aren't. Are recommendations in there for a night like tonight? Or should we just make it conditions, or is there a legal reason for recommendations?
Recommendations are only in the context of non-development application hearings, such as courtesy reviews, such
Right.
as the one that took place today. Normally, it's conditions, and whether they're stipulated to or not, the board has the authority to impose them if there's a nexus, if they're directly related to mitigating a detriment that is associated with the application, like a variance for height, a landscape screening would be directly related to mitigating the negative aspects of height.
Condition, yeah.
So there's really no need to talk about recommendations in here, in my opinion. The request at the time was, can we have an example of what some types of conditions would be? We chose the more general ones, rather than get real specific, as samples, but conditions are almost infinite. And as long as they're directly related to mitigating a detriment. I don't know if that, I hope so. I would leave it as is.
Okay. I'm just curious about that. That, I didn't have a real issue. I have another question later on 13.
Oh, when we get to C? Well, that's,
I think Delia has a question.
I have one on 12.
go ahead.
Where it says, the applicant shall comply with all recommendations and conditions stated in the review memorandum of both the board's engineer and professional planner. And then there's an and there.
And the and doesn't go anywhere, yeah.
And doesn't go anywhere, but my question is,
Well, these are samples, this is a sample.
Right.
Yeah, that last and just goes to C.
Oh,
No, it
okay.
goes to C. In
Okay,
other words,
it goes
there's
to
three,
C.
there's three examples, 1, 2, and 3.
There you go.
but the applicant doesn't have to comply with all recommendations unless we make it a condition, correct?
Yeah, well, the term recommendations there.
But that was for tonight, we did recommendations.
Yeah.
Right.
So maybe we would say recommendations in the event of, you know.
It's really just
courtesy
to
review
refer to
or
the
condition.
comments in the board memos.
Yeah, these
Sometimes
are-
the board will make a recommendation, a board professional will make a recommendation. If they stipulate to it or you impose it, it's gone from a recommendation to a
To-
condition. So I wouldn't read that word as meaning anything
What
other
about the
than.
stipulations?
It doesn't blur anything or weaken anything by having it there.
No,
No.
not
Okay,
at
all
all.
right.
Because once
I'm okay.
you impose it or they stipulate to it, it's a condition of approval.
So is it
What
missing?
about, what happens to those stipulations that come out of the hearing? Where does that get caught?
They, as I said, there could be an infinite amount. You put them, I put them in, you don't put them. I put them in the resolution,
Okay.
and that's where they go. This is to sort of, somebody asked, can we have an example of what a few conditions might be? So that's why we put these in by way of example, but not limitation.
I would add that I think that one of the, in my experience on the board, one of the concerns we've had over the years is that we'd agree to a condition or we'd agree to an approval for an application based on the specific needs of that applicant, but we were also concerned what happens when they sell that property. And it's, will this be respected? And, just because this person gave agreement, where is it really bound?
Like maintenance on stormwater.
Right. Well, so
Yeah.
if you look at the, and this is just to remind us all, the last sentence before the red line, the board may require that some or all conditions of approval or of the resolution itself be recorded with the county clerk, which means being put on notice
On the
forever.
deed.
And it's affecting title forever. And while it may not be an appropriate use of our power in every case, we should always remember that we have that, and we can ask for that. And that will hold people accountable for the long term.
Right. It puts all subsequent purchasers on formal notice that the specific conditions, or all the conditions, you can require the entire resolution to be recorded.
And may create a cause of action for a neighbor or somebody else to act to
Exactly.
protect
Title
their own
company
interests.
Isn't
picks
that
it
a
up.
simpler process to just append it and have it filed with the county clerk?
You could do it that way, or you could, oftentimes what you have is, usually it's for more important quote-unquote conditions, as the chair said. You may not want every condition in every application. What if you end up with a 30-page resolution? There's some costs involved for a homeowner perhaps, to have to record it. So there's things to take into consideration, but important conditions of approval, you can have the applicant record what's called a deed restriction. Could be a couple of pages, a deed to themselves for $1, right? And reference specifically the 1 or 2 or 5 critical conditions that you're requiring them
But
to
that's a
record in the
step
county
that we'd
clerk's
have to
office.
We would have to,
do.
we would have to mandate and follow up on the idea that it was actually done.
Oh, well, as a condition of approval, they have to come show me that.
They've got a recorded
The
deed.
language has to be, has to
Before
be
they get their
approved,
permits or-
et cetera. I could have them show me, or, or the DCS. Anybody can just make sure it happened. So, but it is, Mr. Chairman, you point out an important, that's why we keep it in all our, that wasn't added, that was there to begin with.
Right.
When we reference conditions, it's important for boards to remember, because there was a case, the Aldrich case, because I like to show up and show you, I know the names of cases. But there is no mandatory indexing system for resolutions like there are for mortgages and deeds at the county clerk. And it's been talked about periodically, but nobody's ever required it. Good counsel in the purchase of homes, I would suggest, will go to the municipality and check and make sure, have there been any resolutions, what are the conditions of approval, what's the history, et cetera, but it's not required. So when you make someone record those specific conditions, or the whole resolution, whatever you do, or a deed restriction, it's in the chain of title forever, and title companies will pick it up.
Thank you very much. Should we go to page 13, just to finish up?
Yeah. I had a question there.
Okay.
On the last sentence, the responsibility and authority for post-resolution compliance with conditions and all aspects of any resolution of approval of a development application rests and remains with the city. This I found confusing because the applicant has to comply with all the conditions and the city is responsible for enforcement of those conditions. So I think that
We could add the word enforcement.
I think enforcement belongs
Yeah,
in
it
there.
wasn't meant to say that the applicant isn't required to do it. It's meant frankly to clarify that the planning board or the zoning board are not tasked with, the volunteers thereof, are not tasked with the obligation to go and make sure everybody complies with conditions of approval. That obligation is handled by, I guess, DCS engineering, whoever specifically is required to handle each and every one of those separate conditions. It's a city obligation.
So why don't we say the responsibility and authority for post-resolution enforcement and compliance with conditions and all
Or
aspects of-
enforcement of post-resolution compliance, however.
I would have gone the first way. I would have said the
Yeah.
enforcement for post-resolution compliance. I think that makes it.
Got it.
And we'll add that sentence so it's clear.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions?
So who would that point of contact be within the city? I think it's important to identify that, because
Yeah.
City of
And I-
Summit is a wide-ranging net of,
Yeah, and I think if I understand correctly, and it's a shame our Class 2 board member's not here this evening, Mr. Delory, but I believe that they've put together, and Mr. Schrager, who was here earlier, but I believe they've put together a process, and I don't want to misstate it, but they do have a process and forms and one individual who is centrally responsible overall for enforcement, and I don't want to misstate it.
it's Delari, and.
I thought it was
So
him.
it's- yeah, what's the title of that?
So, we haven't exactly named the committee, but it's really a post-application review committee, and we have appointed Mr. Delari to be a point of contact when, you might be getting some different answers from city staff while the engineer looked at it or zoning looked at it and you're confused. Mr. Delari at the time will be your point of contact if you're having real problems with post-application.
So do we
But
want
for
to?
long-term enforcement of that, I think you need to come up with, like, say, the
title,
title of the
right.
person, because whether Matt's here in a
Correct.
day or
I agree.
15 years from now,
Or department.
right.
Correct.
Can we just say the post-enforcement committee, like you said?
I think that's fine. We haven't named it yet. Post-application. I'll look at my notes.
Okay.
Post-application.
I mean, what is typically done, is it like the construction office or, and like if it's DCS, I guess, but what if they change their acronym? Like.
Well, again, this is for this year. We can certainly, we're going to review this, and we can change our bylaws.
Sure.
We're going to reapprove these every year, so.
I would say City of
I don't know
Summit
how
Department
many
of
down
Community
20.
Services,
Department of Community
Post-application Review Committee.
Services, Post-application review committee.
There
You
we
have
go.
that, Mr. Warner? Okay. And if they refine their name next year, we will update accordingly. All right, with that being said, does anyone else have any other comments or additions to the bylaws, or should we move forward? That's great. All right, I'll take a motion to approval of our bylaws as amended.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, we're doing a roll call?
If you could, please, thank you.
Okay.
Chairman Zucker,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Balsan Alvarez,
Yes.
Mr. Spur,
Yes.
Mr. Felmett,
Yes.
Councilmember Hamlet,
Yes.
Ms. McGee,
Yes.
Mr. Formicelli,
Yes.
Mr. Stern.
Yes.
The motion carries.
All right, thank you. Moving on to the Mount Laurel Subcommittee. There's a resolution appointing planning board members to the City of Summit Affordable Housing Committee and Mount Laurel Subcommittee. The representatives from our panel are, let's see, Susan Bowen and Steve Spur. At least they are nominated, and I think they will be wonderful additions to the panel, and welcome, and represent our interests very well. So if anyone has any other comments, do I have to make a formal nomination, or just a?
Oh, no, we have a resolution memorializing their appointment.
Right, there we
So
go. It's already been
that-
done.
that accomplishes
Congratulations.
it.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you.
Do
So
we
a
need a
motion,
vote?
a second, and a roll call for the
motion?
resolution.
So moved.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Feldman.
Okay. Chairman Zucker,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Balsan Alvarez.
Yes.
Mr. Felmet,
Yes.
Councilmember Hamlet,
Yes.
Ms. McGee,
Yes.
Mr. Formicelli,
Yes.
Mr. Stern.
Yes.
The motion carries.
All right,
It's a binding resolution now, so that
all right.
Good luck to us all.
Congratulations, good luck. Revisions to the DRO. Okay, this is something that we talk about periodically. Every year, the zoning board sends us a review of matters that have come before them that may have shown up to be, how should I say, demonstrating that the DRO might need updating, or demonstrating problems that are not
Clarity.
not working well.
Problems.
In addition, there are other people with other thoughts about what could be done with the DRO. It is within the power of the chair of the planning board to appoint ad hoc committees or subcommittees to pursue particular issues, and I've decided that we should have a DRO revision committee to solicit input from stakeholders. Give you an example. We know that Krista, our zoning officer, is leaving, and she has a wealth of knowledge and probably many thoughts on what has worked and what hasn't worked over the years, and it'd be great to capture as much of that as possible. So in terms of that committee, I know Mr. Spur has served many years in zoning, has produced many of these reports, and loves the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, of course.
And I'd like him to serve on that committee. Similarly, Ms. Balsan Alvarez has many years of experience with the DRO, loves to grapple with the DRO. And I think she would be a welcome addition to that committee. There's room for a third, and I'd like to know if anyone here would like to join. It's not essential, but I welcome anyone stepping forward who would like to take a look at the DRO and these kind of recommendations. In terms of what I'm asking of people is that, again, you seek out stakeholders, put together a report. I wouldn't expect that you need to come back to the board till the latter half of this year. After the summer, certainly, we have time. And whatever report you present to the board, we'll discuss, and we'll, refine down to a list we'd like to recommend to Common Council for their
Recommended
change.
changes, a list. Yeah.
And I see Mr.
You can
Formicelli.
put me down for it, John.
I see a hand just went up.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. Excellent. So, terrific. Also on the agenda tonight, Chelsea, I think, has an update for us on affordable housing.
And I don't know if I formally introduced myself. My name is Chelsea Gleiss, and I'm a professional planner with Burgess Associates.
Thank you, Ms. Weiss.
So the fourth round of affordable housing is coming upon us. So the Department of Community Affairs will be publishing the housing need numbers approximately 7 months ahead of adoption of the legislation, so around November of 2024. Towns must adopt a binding resolution determining their housing obligations by January 31st of 2025, and the obligation can be challenged until approximately a month after that. Challenge disputes need to be resolved another month after that, the end of March 2025. Then the fourth round housing plan must be adopted by mid-next year, June 30th, 2025. The housing plan can be challenged. It gives 2 months for that challenge, and any changes required by the program must be made by the end of 2025. Ordinances implemented and adopted by March 15th, 2026. And after all that, you get immunity for another 10 years until the fifth round. So that's the timeline of what we're looking at.
You said that what comes out in November?
The approximate, let's see, housing need numbers.
And then by January, the town has to pass what?
adopt a binding resolution.
Adopt a binding resolution, which is supposed to reflect whatever was dictated?
It may or may not, I'm sorry.
Please.
Just if I may supplement, COA is formally abolished.
Right.
And the DCA will be calculating fourth round affordable housing numbers. The fourth round, as we all know, was supposed to start July 1, 2025, and be a 10-year to July 1, 2035. But in essence, the legislation that the governor signed on March 20th, I use the term front ends most of what the city and our planning board has to do in regard to the fourth round. It's almost like a prepackaged plan, for lack of a better phrase. So by October 20, 7 months from March 20, by October 20, could be earlier, DCA is to provide the number for each municipality based primarily on the methodology that was utilized in the Judge Jacobson's 41-day trial back in 2018. When they provide that number, it comes down statewide, then region-wide, then municipality-wide. When they provide that number to us on or before October 2024, then we have until January 31, 2025, to adopt a binding resolution, either utilizing that number or a different number, but we have to be able to justify why we're using a different number at that point. And that's done that's not done by the planning board, that's done by the city council. And they adopt the binding resolution. Once they adopt it, that is our fair share obligation. But instead of starting in court, like we all had to do for the third round, as you'll recall, every municipality had essentially file a complaint to start an affordable housing declaratory judgment action and do what used to be done administratively before COA, judicially before the court. Now we start in this way, but once the binding resolution is adopted on or before January 31, 2025, there's a 1-month period for any interested party, AKA Fair Share Housing Corporation and or interested developers, to challenge that number. If they challenge that number, it goes into a new program that's been designed through the Administrative Office of the Courts. It hasn't been put together yet. There'll be regulations, rules, what have you. It is a dispute resolution program, sort of a mediation, but if there's no agreement, then a determination through this dispute resolution program. So if no one challenges the binding resolution and our city's number at that point, then by default, that's our obligation, and it becomes presumptively valid. If it is challenged, well, then it has to be resolved through this dispute resolution program. That, again, it's something brand new. We don't know. It hasn't, the people aren't even in place yet to do it, let alone the rules and regulations. Regardless of however that plays out, by June 30, we have to have adopted, June 30, 2025, 1 day before the fourth round, quote unquote, starts, we have to adopt, our planning board has to adopt our housing element fair share plan, which basically says how we're going to not meet our obligation for the fourth round, that 10-year period, to satisfy that number. And we also have to have draft implementation ordinances ready to go. That's done at the Common Council level. And then, as was mentioned thereafter, there could be challenges again through that dispute resolution program as to how we intend to implement and satisfy that number. Goes through a process, is resolved at some point, either through agreement or determination. And then by March 15th, 2026, we have to actually have our ordinances adopted and be moving forward with satisfying our obligation for the fourth round. You may recall the vacant land adjustment is an important part of our and most municipalities' satisfaction of our obligation. It basically chops up, I'm not even paraphrasing, this is just a sort of a short circuit way of describing it, but it takes whatever the number is, the obligation, and it moves it into sort of two groups. One is the real development potential, i.e. because we only have a certain amount of vacant and available land, the total number is reduced, and the real development potential portion is satisfied by more active, affirmative projects, and maybe extensions of affordability controls that already exist. In other words, extending for another 30 years, deed restricted properties, et cetera. And then what's left over, the unmet need, the rest of the total number, that we have demonstrated we don't necessarily have land vacant and available to satisfy it, that's handled generally by more what I call passive mechanisms, such as a mandatory set-aside ordinance, 5 or more of multifamily units in any development that comes along has to have a 15% or 20%, 15% for rental, 20% for owner-occupied, set-aside of affordable housing to market rate, or other things like overlay zones and the like. The bonus credits that used to be available, some are still available, some are not. A big one that's not is a rental. We used to get 1 bonus credit on top of, so it was 2 units for one, up to a certain cap. I think it was up to 25% of the total obligation for every rental affordable housing unit. That's gone. That's not good. And then there are about a dozen, I won't bore you with all of them, bonus credits. Some you get a half a bonus credit, some you get a full bonus credit. But overall, I think it's more difficult for municipalities to satisfy their obligation than it was before. I think it's fair to say. I think that's about it.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, I'd like to ask a quick question. Can you opine on the county and what we need to be doing? I saw some deadlines around April 8th, and in a very, to summarize it briefly, who's working with the county, who's obtaining guidance from the county, and what are our deadlines regarding cross-acceptance and efforts towards endorsement of the state plan?
Sure, and that's a different but related issue. That's the state development and redevelopment plan, which hasn't been updated despite the requirement to be updated every 3 years for about 22 years. But it's now being updated, and it's coinciding time-wise with this new 4th round affordable housing legislation. There's, my understanding is by April 8th, the preliminary draft state development and redevelopment plan will be distributed, and basically what it does is it maps throughout the state where growth areas are, where agricultural areas are, where open space areas are, and the like. Could certainly have a very significant, and will have a very, in my opinion, significant impact on high-density housing, affordable housing, where it could be located, where it may not be as readily located. So we'll dovetail, I think, with the 4th round. And then there's a period of time in that state development and redevelopment plan adoption process where municipalities and counties are given an opportunity to input called, provide input, called cross-acceptance. And that process basically is handled by the county commissioners, can't say freeholders anymore, county commissioners. For each municipality, and more specifically for our city, to have direct input, we should be ready by April 8th to contact or have people designated to contact the county to provide input what our desires are vis-a-vis the state plan. There's different ways it can be done. To the extent the planning board takes an active role, if that is the decision to be made, It could be by designation of an individual, could be by designation of a subcommittee. So that's up to the board. Well, really, I guess the city and the board should, make that determination.
By April 8th?
Well, April 8th is when the communication will need to begin, because by that point, we'll have a draft of the plan, and it'll start the clock ticking on, there's probably going to be hearings, through if not in the spring, by the summer. And I think it's and I apologize, I have to double check if it's year end, when the plan has to be completed. I lost track. Might be year end, I'll double check that. But as early as April 8th would be the opportunity to begin communicating with the county with respect to this draft plan.
So it's not, that April 8th is not a deadline, it's a.
April 8th is not a
beginning of the
deadline,
window.
it's effectively a start date.
Okay.
It's quick, though. Is it, how many days is it after April 8th, do you know, Steve? I feel like it's quick turnaround. I mean, just from what I'm seeing, to my colleagues, is that there are a lot of municipalities engaging with counties right now on this cross-acceptance, so I'm not sure if it's Burgess's firm or the city, but I think we need to, maybe, Steve, I think somebody's got to take the ball with this one and quarterback it.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
just note, I believe it's 45 days is the cross acceptance period. And our firm has reached out to the county to just get the ball rolling, to say, Summit is ready to discuss it as soon as April 8th when that report comes out, when the draft comes out.
Who's lead for us, outside of this board? You?
I mean, I think Steve Spur and I are in the Mount Laurel Committee, along with,
Oh, Steve.
Steve Spur is in the Mount Laurel Committee, and we just talked about it last week for the first time.
Without delving into the detail of the confidential discussions, the form that this may take in terms of an affirmative statement by the city of Summit, one of the options is for essentially the planning board together to submit our master plan as a component, a reflection, right, of our community's ability to accommodate the development that is proposed through this state development and redevelopment plan. Though, in addition to that, is likely some memorandum or something that overlays it and reflects any new perspective, policy formation that would be of interest to the county to consider. Because what appears to really be a question, at least initially, is will the county be in a position to advocate for Summit's position when it comes to whatever emerges out of the state development and redevelopment plan? And that's where the conversation begins. It is possible commissioners that are resident in Elizabeth, at least that's where they act out of, may be diverging in a sense from what communities like Summit, Westfield, New Providence, Berkeley Heights, others believe is appropriate. So I think the April 8th starting point and what Burgess is beginning to do to feel out the position with which the county will take will then inform how Summit can coordinate with them moving forward to kind of ladder up to comment upon the state program. But we have some further.
This is such a short timeline that is the only document we have that's representative of all our citizens and a lot of thought.
It's unlikely that we're gonna.
What direction we want our community to go in and what kind of development we want. I mean, that's our latest document. We don't have time to, do an outreach and find out what's new, what do we want to add. It doesn't seem feasible.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to rely on our existing documents.
Our master plan re-exam, which is actually our last one.
I know, I love that.
Yeah. But
Thank
did you
you,
want to add
Joe.
something? Sorry, Chelsea.
Yeah, no problem. I would just note that I think that the scope of currently Summit is mostly located in PA1, Planning Area 1, the Metropolitan Growth Area. There is a portion of the city that is in PA5, which is the environmentally sensitive planning area. So I'll be interested to see what changes for that, but I think that and we'll see also with the plan itself, breaking down PA1, PA5, what is changing with regards to their recommendations for those planning areas. So I'll be interested to see that, but I just wanted to give you an idea of what the scope will be in terms of what you might want to disagree with if they change the planning area of a certain portion of the city, or
When
if
was the last time they did this?
2001.
Can
And
we-
do you have any links to any of this data that we can look at, so we can see the perimeter PA one and get up to speed on the last one that was done?
Sure, I mean, yeah, it's available online, there's interactive maps, and, yeah.
Can we ask you to provide us with a summary
Just
memo?
get us going.
As, you know,
Sure.
after April 8th, but, you know, soon thereafter, just to let us know what's happening?
Yeah, I think yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Also, all these dates for the two different, you know, could we have at least the chair, or, you know, have all these dates and for both scenarios?
No, not a problem. And as mentioned, some of the timeline dates relate to action items that the city, the common council has to take, some the planning
Right.
board, some are just deadlines for others to hopefully not object.
If you want to put that into the dates, that'd be helpful too.
Yeah,
What our responsibilities are and who do we have to talk to?
Yeah, no, that's what I'm suggesting, yeah.
Great.
I'll even put the word "hopefully you won't object" in there.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Should we move on to the minutes, or is it?
Sure.
Okay. The minutes from January 22nd were circulated. Does anyone have any comments, corrections, changes?
One at the end.
If not, I do.
Okay, go.
Paragraph, let's see, the last page above the vote, not the real last page.
Oh.
They're not numbered, so, but above where it says vote, if you'll see on the second to last page, the paragraph beginning conditions. See what I'm saying? The conditions for this application were discussed. A stipulation was made for the survey to be done for the property. Another stipulation was that the board would retain jurisdiction for any further development on the proposed, if there's a grant of a subdivision approval and associated variance relief, that would be deed restricted. I think so, the A comes out. But I think what we were trying to say there was, if there's a grant of a subdivision approval and associated conditions for variance relief, those would be recorded, so that all successors in title would be on actual notice. Does that read cleaner?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
that is better.
Those are my only comments. Anything else? If not, I'll take a motion to approve the minutes.
I have one little thing.
Oh, sorry.
I don't know, but it's a theme. We did, on the last page,
Mhm.
is it the last page? Before we adjourned, there was discussion at the very end, right before.
Same paragraph.
Yeah. We had some discussion, I don't know whether it's worth adding or not, about the fact that on the survey, some document plan that we had, there was some kind of municipal piping with a grate, you know, something. There was something there, and we were asking our engineer, you know, what about that? Can you work with them? Can we figure out what that is? Could that be, you know, helpful in mitigating some of the water problems that is obviously leveling all the trees and whatever they've done, it's created some problems. So I know that discussion took place, and I think it wouldn't hurt to have it in there, because I think they are probably talking, because they both said they would talk about it and see if there was any utility in using that pipe.
What's your proposed language?
Yeah, let's see if I can read my scribble. Discussion with board engineer and land surveyor to understand existing drainage shown on existing drawings and what is needed to mitigate current drainage issues. Something like that. It was more like,
Can we just push it till the
Engineer,
next
what
meeting?
can we do?
Can we push it till the next meeting till we get the exact words, or is that, seems fine to me?
I'm hoping that's
Yeah.
happening, and so I thought should be in there somehow, but we could just be questioned engineer
Yeah.
about drainage.
Yeah.
Could be in there. It's not critical, I want that to happen, so.
Well,
Thinking we could-
so why don't we say?
Did I dream that? No.
Why don't we say, we questioned, engineer was questioned regarding drainage and.
Potential mitigation.
And mitigation options. Yeah.
Okay.
Is that good? Got you. All right, thanks. Then I'll take a motion on that,
Okay,
as amended.
so moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second?
Thank you, Mr. Smith. And the vote? Voice vote.
All those in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries.
I think that's all we've got for tonight. Isn't that enough? 10:30?
That's enough.
I guess we're adjourned.
All right. Thank you.
Do we need to have a vote to adjourn? We have to do a motion?
A motion is second, and all in favor. Hopefully, it's not contested.
All right, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you. And second? Second. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Go home.